Welcome back to the channel, you Unheard nerds. We've got yet another mock check ride. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to y'all, the viewers, because we've gotten over 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We have actually doubled our subscriber count in the last 28 days, which is amazing. I've crossed the monetization threshold. So I really do appreciate that. We can finally start monetizing these and helping support the channel, get better content, maybe interview some more people. I am actually looking for a couple pilots to interview for, some more little podcasty content, help people really decide which avenue they want to take when it comes to their aviation career. So if you are interested, let me know in the comments or shoot me a message on any of the social medias that I happen to be on. So let's get into the mock check ride, or let's get into some of the details about it. This student actually bought an airplane before she ever started flight training. And that's not really an uncommon thing. That's not really a strange thing. A lot of people do it to try and save money. Okay. If you were to buy like a Cessna 152, a Piper Cherokee, some of those smaller 2 or 4 seater training aircraft that burn anywhere from 6 to 10 gallons an hour, you can save money on your flight training by selling the airplane at the end of your flight training. And airplanes generally appreciate in value as long as you don't crash them. So you might even make a little bit of money on it. But of course, talk to a broker, talk to an insurance agent, talk to, somebody who can actually finance the airplane. I don't have any experience doing that, but I have seen other people do it. But that is not what this student did. She actually went and bought a European Shark, which is one of 4 airplanes that operate in the United States. Insurance, is rough. So keep that in mind if you're going to buy an airplane. Getting training in it is difficult, especially because there's only 4 here in the States. But what she did end up getting is an airplane with the cruise speed of a Bonanza and the fuel burn of a Cessna 152, and she can put pump gas in it. A whole lot cheaper than the $6 a gallon for av fuel at my local airport. So without further ado, let's get into the mock check ride. And again, I thank all of y'all for continuing to watch, follow, subscribe, like, all that jazz. Let's get into it. Just to hit that record button, I want to just ask, so I've got it, recorded. Are you okay with me recording this and using it for any kind of social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever other social medias happen to come out? Yes. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So I like to go through any kind of script that a DPE is going to go through, right? DPE, they're going to ask for your logbook, medical certificate, government issued photo ID. They're going to want to make sure that all your endorsements are correct. If you're really curious about what endorsements you need, I know you're not an instructor, so you probably haven't looked at this document, but it's Advisory Circular 6165H. In the appendix of that document, it breaks it down by certificate you're going for, what endorsements are required. It breaks it down real Barney style, because the FAA knows instructors we suck at paperwork. We're good at teaching, but paperwork is, right? So if you're curious, go reference your endorsements. And I know you said you've kind of put this dream on hold for a while, so I don't know how long you've been in training or how old your logbook is. Older logbooks, the regulations on the printed endorsements in the logbook might not be accurate. Okay. So 6165H, if there's a new one, it's just another letter down the alphabet, right?
Okay. Perfect.
Now, DPE is going to bring up, there's 3 different outcomes for every check ride. All right. There's satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and incomplete. Satisfactory means that you're consistently inside the standards. Doesn't necessarily mean that you don't momentarily fall outside of the standards. Just means that you are consistently inside the standards. Using steep turns for an example, if you drop 5 feet low or 5 knots slow, it's not the end of your check ride. Okay. As long as you apply prompt and appropriate correction to get back within the standards. All right.
Okay.
Not overcorrecting, not undercorrecting. I always recommend every student talk through your check ride. Okay. If you're doing dumb things but saying smart things, hopefully the DPE doesn't notice the dumb things you're doing. All right. Then you've got unsatisfactory. This is consistently outside of the standards, or the DPE or the examiner has to take control of the aircraft to prevent a pilot deviation, damage to the aircraft, damage to personnel on the ground, damage to other equipment on the ground, right? The example I use is at UND. They had a student on a solo, right? They set their parking brake just a little too loose, and when they started getting into their after start checklist, the airplane rolled away and sliced up another airplane.
My God!
So make sure your parking
Is that
brake
University of North Dakota? When you say
Yes.
UND, is it? Oh wow! Hey, cool. I'm born and raised in Minnesota, so very familiar with UND.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think they go to Minnesota all the time for a lot of their long cross countries. But not trying to talk bad about UND. They teach thousands of students. Like shit's
Right,
bound
of
to
course.
happen. But that's just one thing that I bring up, right? Obviously, if that happens on your check ride, or if the DP has to slam on the brakes because you're running through a checklist, not paying attention to the fact that the aircraft's moving, obviously that would be an unsatisfactory performance on that check ride. Same thing when it comes to the oral portion. Satisfactory, consistently with inside the standards, doesn't necessarily mean you know the answer to every question. A lot of DPEs, they'll ask a question and then keep digging to see where the bottom of the knowledge is. Don't let it fluster you. Okay.
Okay.
You're like, hey, I know this shit. Why do they keep asking questions on it? I thought we've gone through this. They just want to see how far the knowledge goes and to see if it is going to bother you. Right? Unsatisfactory, having to look everything up is a really good reason for an unsatisfactory on an oral. Just blatantly not knowing safety related information, like how to recover from a spin, what to do in the event of a fire, some pretty basic stuff, right? Then we've got incomplete. The regulation that covers appropriate reasons for an incomplete on a check ride is 6143 Bravo, right? And it's things like weather, illness, aircraft is unairworthy, anything pertaining to the safety of flight. Oh shit, I'm not prepared is not an appropriate answer. All right. I did stage checks for UND, and the amount of students that would show up with no nav log and like, hey, I'm here, but I don't have a nav log. It's like, congratulations, unsat. We can continue though. and, and they're like, but I'm just unprepared. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not my problem.
Okay.
I know it sounds kind of rough, but remember, UND, they're trying to train airline pilots. You're not going to be able to show up to Delta saying, well, I'm just not ready for the check ride, because I didn't do planning or I didn't study or whatnot, right? So the first thing I like to get into is systems, right? So what can you tell me about the engine in your aircraft?
Sure. It's like homing, horizontally opposed, direct drive, air cooled.
Okay.
And it puts out 160 horsepower at 2700 RPM.
2700 RPM. So if you were to kind of, let's say you had to order this engine, what kind of numbers would you associate with it? Numbers, letters, right? We got the O320. All right. Do you know what that O and that 320 means?
The O stands for horizontally opposed. So obviously it's 4 cylinders. You got 2 cylinders on each side. It creates a rather efficient space for the engine to sit, is my understanding, compared to like a V8 or a Mustang.
Yep. That's why Porsche uses
and
it.
then the number in the middle, I think has to do with the measurement of the cylinders.
Yes. So it's the
I
cubic
don't know.
inches, right?
Okay.
What it's measuring is the circle that the cylinder is, right? At the bottom, where the cylinder is at the bottom. It's measuring that entire volume of all 4 cylinders in cubic inches. So you could fit 320 cubic inches of water inside every cylinder. Or sorry, total number, like 4 times something comes up to 320.
Okay.
Right?
Good to know. Okay.
Now, what kind of gas can you put in this thing?
100 low lead.
Is there any other fuel that you could put in this thing?
You can just put the 100, but it's not recommended. Where is my POH? I just came from the airport and I'm kind of, hang on. Yeah, it says 100 or 100 low lead.
Yep. What color is the 100?
Ah,
It's green. It's green.
blue? It's not okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, blue is 100 LLL. I'm sorry.
Yep. Blue is the
Green.
100 low
Okay.
lead. It's hard to get the 100. Some remote airports still have it.
Okay.
The only reason I bring it up is because, remember, you're going to be a private pilot, not a private pilot limited to your local area, right? So you fly to Canada or Mexico or what have you, and you're like, and you think you're stranded because they don't have blue. All they have is green. And it's like, no, you can use the green stuff, right? What's the total capacity of this?
Well, it holds 50 gallons, 48 usable.
All right. So why is some of it usable and some of it not?
Well, it has to do with how the tanks sit within the wings, and there's always a little bit of gasoline that isn't going to get into the piping, I guess is the best way to explain it.
That is exactly how you explain it. Now this airplane, right? You said you're training up in Minnesota?
Actually, I'm in Iowa. I just recently moved to Iowa, so
Okay.
I've been training out of Northwest Iowa.
All right. So it's a little, I'm trying to remember. Is it chilly up in Iowa?
Yeah, but you know what? It's windy all the time.
Well, so you know that this thing needs oil, right? What are some of the purposes of putting, what are some of the purposes of oil? Like, why do we use oil? What is oil doing for the engine?
It lubricates, it seals, it removes contaminants, it dissipates heat.
Awesome. Only other thing I'd add, cushions. Oil works for cushioning as well.
Okay.
Now, if you, let's say, move down to Florida, where it's pretty toasty down in Florida, do you know where to look in the POH to decide what kind of oil you need?
Yeah, I do. I just ran across that the other day, and I was trying to figure out what SAE stands for.
I forget
Without
what SAE
Googling it.
stands for. It's like the standard. I think it's Standard Automotive Engineering. Is what it stands for. So it's just like, hey, this is the standard that we're basing these weights off of. It's kind of like metric or standard when it comes to a screw.
Okay, I'm looking. I just ran across this the other day, and I'm thinking I was in the maintenance section, but I could be wrong. 819, page number 811. Could be wrong. Oh, yep. So above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, you want a viscosity of 50, the SAE of 50.
Awesome. So you know exactly where to look to find it to ensure that you're operating within the appropriate limitations of the aircraft, right? Remember, airplanes, they can move pretty far. What's the maximum weight that you could take off from in this airplane?
2,440 pounds.
All right. Now, what about on the ramp?
Ramp. Oh God, these are great questions. Oh, +7.
Yep, it's another 7, right? It's the idea that we're going to burn a little bit taxiing to the runway, right? Nobody ever parks their airplane on the runway unless they own the runway. And I don't know about you, but I don't own a runway.
It's on my wish list.
Yeah, right? I was just lucky to get a hangar. Damn.
Me too. I got a hangar, and I've been waiting and waiting. Anyway, yeah, hangars are in short supply.
Oh yeah. I had to. Oh God. What you call it? My airplane sat out in the snow and ice 1 year, and someone felt so bad that they were like, "Yo, just put it in here. Like, come on." I was like, "Oh," because I'm up in Wisconsin, and there was just no hangars available. There's absolutely no
Minneapolis.
room.
Yeah, because I just moved from Minneapolis. I paid for a hangar for 9 months, and then waiting for my plane, and then we moved, here, and I lucked out because the FBO I'm at, a space opened up, and it's a relatively new airport. It's beautiful. Oh. Unfortunately, there's only one runway. But yeah, I'm happy to have hangar space.
Hangars are in such short supply around here. The ones at my airport, they were built in the 60s, and they're going for like 20 to 30 grand. It is insane. But I was lucky. I found somebody that they had a spare one that they didn't want to sell, but they're willing to rent it to me for $50 a month. So
Oh,
I
sweet.
can't really like the $50 a month rental is cheaper than the mortgage I'd have to have on it to
Yeah.
actually buy it. All right. So let's get a little bit more into systems. I'm going to go a little deeper into the POH. We just went through the general section right there in the front. Section 1, and I believe the next section we're going to dig into is going to be section 7. Yep, description and operation of airplane systems. Old airplanes, that's section 6. But what can you tell me about the electric system in this aircraft?
I have an alternator and a battery. The battery is 12 volt. The alternator is 14, and it goes from alternating current, obviously, to DC.
All right. Now, your aircraft seems to have a little bit of limitation when it comes to that cigar lighter, doesn't it? It seems like a fairly normal thing that you might, when we look at our phone or look at like phone chargers in our car, we can plug them into those things. I don't know why they're still that shape. But your aircraft actually has a limitation on that. Can I plug in my phone charger into that cigarette lighter?
Do not use cigar lighter receptacles as power sources for any devices other than the cigar lighters supplied with the airplane. Any other device plugged into these receptacles may be damaged.
I'm assuming you probably charge your iPad on that thing, don't you?
I haven't actually
really?
yet, because this is my trainer plane. But it's so funny.
It looks like a pretty innocuous item, right? You would use you'd do that with your car cigarette lighter all day, every day.
Right.
Your airplane specifically has a limitation not to use it. Now, if you had a momentary illumination of your, what did they call it in this thing? Electrical system right there, battery mounted in a box, regulator over voltage, 4 electrical switches are located on the center instrument panel, rheostat on the left side of the navigation light, standard electrical. Oh, I lost it. Right. So what kind of instruments do you have in your aircraft? Are they 6-pack or glass?
I have both.
Okay.
So it does have a 6-pack. And then we have a G5 for my heading indicator in particular. And of course, it comes with a attitude indicator. And then I've got the little Garmin for, tracking my navigation and keeping track of traffic.
Awesome. Now, that means you still have a vacuum pump on your aircraft, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what instruments are you going to lose if that vacuum pump dies?
So it's interesting because the only thing that is vacuum driven is the analog attitude indicator. The heading indicator on our airplane is actually driven by the G5.
Yep.
And then we have one other device that would typically fall under a gyroscopic driven instrument, but it's actually driven electronically. And that would be the turn coordinator.
Awesome.
Is electronically driven.
Awesome. Now, the POH I found is for a carbureted PA28161. Is that the same for you?
Yes.
Awesome. Now, what are some of this is going to sound weird, what are some of the benefits of a carbureted airplane? There's not many. I'll tell you that. There ain't many.
Wow, because I always thought everybody would want to fuel injected. I certainly know the downsides. Let me think about this. I mean, I guess you can really tweak out leaning the mixture.
I mean, you can do that with fuel injected. Carbureted airplanes start really well. Carbureted airplanes start really well in the heat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to
Okay.
start a fuel injected airplane somewhere where it's really hot or the engine's still really warm? Well, you
No.
don't have a fuel injected airplane, so of course not.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
but carbureted airplanes work real well in the heat. Now, what are some of the downsides? You seem pretty well versed in some of those.
Well, they're susceptible to icing and mechanical failure.
All right. And then, we've got our issues on the other end of the spectrum of temperature, right? Carburetors don't really like
Yes.
cold starts, right? How would
Right.
you how would you identify carburetor icing? How do you know if you're developing carburetor ice?
I would see a loss of RPM.
Now, are you expecting a drastic, like immediate, like, oh my God, I just lost 500 RPM, or is it going to be a gradual buildup of a loss of RPM?
I would expect gradual.
Right. Now, what are you going to do if you all of a sudden realize that you've got carburetor ice? What's your next plan of action?
I'm going to turn the carb heat on.
And what are you expecting? Once you apply that carb heat, what's going to happen?
Actually, I might experience a little bit of engine roughness.
Yeah.
Just, for a few seconds while it's doing its job. As it's melting the ice, we've got now water being introduced into the engine along with the fuel air mixture, so it could cause some engine roughness. So I think it's critically important to leave that carb heat on. If there's icing, I'm leaving that thing on.
I mean, that's a really good idea. Now, why are carburetors susceptible to carburetor icing and fuel injected airplanes aren't? Right? They both have throttle valves. They both are controlled mechanically. Air goes through them. So why is a carburetor susceptible to carburetor icing when a fuel injected airplane isn't really that susceptible to induction icing?
Mhm. So if you look at the Venturi feature within a float type carburetor system, what's actually happening is that Venturi is creating a low pressure area. And what do we know about low pressure areas is that it's typically colder,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's fascinating to me as I was reading up and learning about all of this, I guess I was kind of blown away that you can actually get carb icing when it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit if you have like 80% humidity, which is mind-boggling. I mean, it's 70 out.
Yeah, it's
And
warm
you
out.
still can get carb icing.
I would never be concerned about it, right? One
Right.
thing that a lot of students miss on this, right? Low pressure, you do get a low temperature, right? You also get the air moving through it that's causing the carburetor to cool down. A lot of people forget that the fuel is also evaporating, right? When something changes from a liquid to a gas, it needs to absorb heat from the outside area, right?
Oh, God, yes.
That's what's causing a lot of that pressure drop is that change of
Oh,
state from a liquid to a gas.
awesome.
Right? That's where you're starting to get that like 30-degree drop or 30 degrees Fahrenheit drop.
Thank you.
Of course, that's the whole point of these.
Oh,
Right?
that's okay. You have such interesting tidbits of information. I just love this. Cool.
I do my best. I do
Awesome.
my I've been instructed for
This is just
about a
like
decade now. So
this is so cool. Awesome. Thank you.
now, have you ever driven a carbureted car?
I used to own a Dodge Dart.
Yeah. So when you go to start that thing, you pump the gas once or twice and you start it, right? Now, why don't I do
Yes.
that in a carbureted airplane? Why do I use the primer as opposed to just pumping the throttle?
Right. That's a good question. Because when you prime a carbureted engine, the primer actually is vaporizing the fuel directly into the cylinder heads. Right?
It's not directly into the cylinder heads. You've got the right idea, right?
Okay.
So the injectors are actually going. The little primer injectors should be going
Yeah.
they should be shooting at the intake valve, but not necessarily
Oh,
in the cylinder head, right?
okay.
That would require a lot more pressure than we can generate with our little thumb push primer.
Okay.
Because if both valves are closed inside that engine, if both valves are closed inside of a cylinder, right,
Huh?
and the piston is at top dead center, there's not going to be a whole lot of room in there. I'm going to end up overcoming like the airplane engine trying to squirt fuel directly into the cylinder head. So it's squirting it right at the intake valve, and if the valve is open, then it's going to go right into the combustion chamber. But if the valve's closed, and that's why, right? So if I was to just pump the throttle, where's that fuel going to go?
It's going to sit in the fuel lines. It's going to go into the carburetor.
So where's the carburetor mounted on an engine or mounted on an airplane engine? Is it on the top or on the bottom? It's on the bottom.
I think, okay.
Right? So if I pump the throttle, where's the fuel going to go? It's going to drain out the bottom of the carburetor and sit in the cowling.
Yes. And then you're at risk for even a fire. You could potentially. I got to take some notes here. Okay.
There are countless pipers that burn down every year because people are too lazy to just use the primer.
Oh.
It's kind of ridiculous. There was a Seminole that burnt down in Chandler, Arizona, because somebody pumped the throttle as opposed to using the primer when they went to start the second engine, and it caught fire. And that was the engine that was where the exit was, where the door was. It was the right side engine, and they caught it on fire while the left side was running. So I had to shut down the left side and then evacuate through the fire because they were too big to fit out the emergency exit. Because the emergency exit on a Seminole is not that big. So it's not just a, bah, humbug, do it the right way kind of thing. No, there's a severe danger associated with it. All right. So it's good that you know exactly why you're doing it the way why you're doing it appropriately. Right. So if I was to get a frozen or a bee built-in nest in my pitot tube, what would I expect to see on my instrumentation? Or what instrument would I expect to lose?
Airspeed indicator.
Yep, that's the only one that's going to use your pitot tube. Now, how do we heat the cabin in this aircraft?
Oh, that's a great question. We are actually pulling heat from the engine through a shroud.
All right. What's that shroud wrapped around? What part of the engine?
The exhaust system on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's an exhaust shroud, I think is the technical term. So you have to be very concerned or at least knowledgeable about signs of carbon monoxide poisoning.
All right. Now, here's a great opportunity to bring up my favorite thing to tell students. Never miss an opportunity to shut up. All right?
Okay.
So the question was, how is the cabin heated? It's through an exhaust shroud that pumps that brings air in through the exhaust shroud into the cabin, heating the cabin.
Okay.
Did I ask anything about carbon monoxide?
No. Shut up.
Answer the question that's asked, right? The example I use is a DPE asks you, do you know what time it is? Yes.
Okay.
I know it seems stupid, but
okay.
Don't
don't tell me.
Yeah, don't tell on yourself, right? Don't try to dig into systems, especially if you don't understand it, because you had a pretty good understanding of the whole system. Not saying that you didn't is great. You had the information you had the information to the follow-up questions. But the DPE had no intention of asking follow-up questions. You just gave them more ammo to ask follow-up questions.
Okay, got it.
Right?
Got it.
A lot of these DPEs, they're old. They're trying to get their $800. They're trying to check their boxes and get on their way. Right?
Okay.
So answer the question. Let them be happy with the response. It's your instructor's job to verify that you're going to be a safe pilot. Okay, because even if you do go out and, heaven forbid something happens, they're going to go ask the DPE for their plan of action. They're going to interview the DPE for about 20 minutes, and they're going to be on their way. The person they're really going to grill is your instructor, and they're going to say, well, how did she perform during this scenario? How did she perform during this portion of her training? Right? So DPE, they're there to test you and evaluate you based on the standards set by the ACS.
Hmm.
It's your instructor's job to verify that you're going to be a safe and efficient, a safe pilot. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So just to answer the DPE's question, to
Okay.
a T. Okay.
Okay.
Does your airplane have air conditioning? I know some of these get air conditioning.
No.
No, that'd be nice.
Hmm.
All right. So let's get into some limitations of this aircraft. First of all, I'm not asking you specifically what VA is because I still have to find the limitation section in your POH. But I'm not asking for the number, but describe to me what VA is.
Maneuvering speed.
Awesome. Now, why does it? If I am below maneuvering speed, what am I allowed to do without risking damage to the aircraft?
You can make abrupt changes. So, for example, I could use an aileron control and maybe a rudder at the same time.
So it's actually
Safely.
it's
Is that?
actually the opposite of that. If you are below VA, it allows for one swift full
Oh, if
control
I'm
movement.
below VA, see
Yeah.
how I'm so glad I'm doing this. Yes, it's only one control.
Yes, once as
Okay.
well.
Yes.
All right. There was an A300 that snapped its tail off from 2.5 rudder applications. They were
So
well. Go ahead.
I have a question regarding that. So it's not like you can move the aileron and then let 3 seconds go by and jam in rudder. You're limited to one change, right?
Yep. Until you bring it back to a stable, pretty much straight and level flight or a stable condition. Right. But here's the thing. Have you ever done a full control movement? Probably not, right? You might have given it
No.
full rudder on a slip one time.
Yeah.
All right. But you've never just ripped the yoke back into your chest. Nobody does that, right?
So it's full.
Yes,
It's
it's
whatever.
full.
Okay.
It is to the complete stop. Like you pull it or you twist it or you kick it until it doesn't go anymore. That is what you can do below VA.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
And it just prevents damage to the aircraft. Right?
Okay.
So
Low VA.
at our highest weight of 2,440 pounds, right? 2,440 pounds. What indicated airspeed is our VA?
111.
It's 111, right? But at 1,531, it's a lot lower, isn't it? You remember what it is?
88.
It's 88. Why does it change with weight?
Because it's easier to move a feather than a rock.
That's pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty damn good, right? You can apply more force to a feather easier than you can to a rock, right? So if an airplane's heavy, you can't necessarily move it or you can't apply as much acceleration or force to it than if you were flying a light airplane. It's easier to move a feather than a rock. I love that. I'm gonna steal that, all right? Now, what I just want to make sure, some people do mix this up. Maneuvering speed is not turbulence penetration speed. Okay. A lot of people think maneuvering speed is the speed at which you will slow down to in the event that you start entering turbulence. It's not the case. Your airplane doesn't necessarily have a specific turbulence penetration speed. Top of the green arc would really be the turbulence penetration speed in your aircraft. But when you start getting into larger airplanes, like if you were to ever go get a King Air or what have you, it's going to have a turbulence penetration speed, which is going to be different than VA. A lot of people think VA is turbulence penetration. VA does not protect you from damage in the event of turbulence. It only protects you from one full swift control movement. Okay. Now, what is VNE in this aircraft?
160.
160. Awesome. Should I ever exceed this?
No.
All right. What's VNO?
126.
When can I exceed this?
Only in calm, non-turbulent air.
And exercise extreme caution, right?
Caution.
Now, what's the maximum speed at which you can deploy all of your flaps?
103.
103. I know that was a weird way to word that question. Cessnas, they have a graduated flap extension speed. Now, how is that going to be depicted on your airspeed indicator?
The white arc.
Which end of it?
Well,
The top of it.
Yeah. Okay. With the top of it, I would say the bottom, but the top. I get what you're saying.
The highest speed associated with the white
Highest
arc.
speed. Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
what is the bottom of the white arc depicting?
That's the stall speed with. Wait a minute. So VSO stuff out is 44. And so it stalls at 55 without flaps.
Okay, so you're saying that the bottom of the white arc could be VSO, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of the dang instrument in my head. Yes. Yes. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be 55 because 40 comes out.
The great way to think of the bottom of the white arc, because again, you're not just getting approved to fly this one specific airplane. Bottom of the white arc is stall speed and landing configuration.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Because if you get into something more complex like a Dakota, well, not a Dakota. A Lance, a Piper Lance. That thing's got retractable gear and flaps and constant speed prop. It's a little bit more of a complex aircraft. The bottom of the white arc would be gear down, flaps out, ready to land. Make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Limitations pretty solid. I wouldn't say that you've got any real concerns when it comes to limitations. Let's get into some emergencies. Right now, we talked about the what would cause an engine fire on start. But what's your response? Let's say you have an engine fire while you're trying to start this airplane. What are you going to do?
First thing I'm going to do is cut off all sources of fuel. So shut off the fuel selector valve. My mixture comes to idle, throttle close, fuel pump off, and I'm literally pushing the nose down to try to put the fire out.
So engine fire during start, not in flight.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, this is quite interesting to me. So as I'm cranking the engine, I'm going to leave the throttle open, but I'm going to shut the mixture to idle cutoff and the fuel selector off in an attempt to draw the fire into the engine. Let's say I accomplish that. I'm going to let it run for a couple of seconds, and then I'm shutting the thing off and I'm running.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's not your airplane, right?
Yeah.
If it's a school's airplane, that thing's got good insurance. Don't be worried. Try and stop the fire. Try and put it out if you can with the controls. If not, get the hell away from that thing. All right. Now, if it's my airplane, I'm going down with the boat, right? I got good insurance, but my airplane's one of 38. I don't think I'm replacing it.
Wow, you must have a warbird.
No, I actually have a C. It's only it's a Lake 200 is what it is. Here, let me pull up the 1 second.
But you own 38 planes?
No, I don't own 38 planes. I have flown.
Wow.
Wait, that's your POH.
You've flown 38 planes? Oh my Lord.
Yeah, I've definitely flown a lot.
Ah.
This one's actually
I
mine.
love that. Oh my God, it's a seaplane.
I absolutely love this thing. So as you and again, one of 38. So I'm going down with the bird.
Hey, you're by lake country, no problem.
Exactly. I absolutely love this thing. It's an absolute blast.
Oh my God. That is so cool. I'm just dying to get in a seaplane. I just think that would be the coolest thing to land on a lake and take off. Oh
Oh,
my God.
it is an absolute blast. I mean, Jack Brown's could get you your seaplane rating in like 2-3 days. It's in like they're doing it in like a Cub or a 172, so it's not the same. There's some
Mhm.
place I think in like some deep South state, I forget where. Like maybe it's Kentucky, somewhere along the
Mhm.
Mississippi, maybe. Um, that you can get your seaplane rating in a Grumman Widgeon. It's like
Oh,
8 grand, but I've gotten to go for a few rides in a Grumman Widgeon, and it is an absolute hoot.
oh,
Um,
that is a beautiful plane. Oh my gosh.
all right, let's see a couple more emergencies, right? What would you do if your alternator annunciator light became illuminated?
Ooh. Obviously, I'd be concerned that my alternator is going out. I would try to reset it. So you hit the alternator button for just a couple of seconds and turn it back on. But if it does not work, I only have, I'm talking too much.
Oh yeah, how much battery
30
do you have
minutes of
left here?
battery.
Yeah.
I only have 30 minutes of battery. So I want to make sure that I'm shutting down all of my non essential stuff that's running off the electrical bus. So,
All right. Now, your your POH, right? It says reduce electrical load, right? Land as soon as practical. Now it says if alternator loads are not reduced, alternator off, battery off, land as soon as possible. Anticipate complete electrical failure. How do you really break down the difference between land as soon as practical or land as soon as possible?
that's a great question.
All right. Land as
Um,
soon as practical is there is a
mhm,
reduction in safety margin, but I am not in immediate danger.
got it.
Land as soon as possible is I am possibly
I'm in danger.
I am in immediate danger. Right. Um, now, if I can reduce my electrical load and there's nothing weird going on, right? Then I just had an alternator failure. It's not a big deal. All right. I've got 30
Mhm.
minutes of battery. Am I going to lose my engine if my alternator fails?
No.
So am I in any immediate danger or did I just reduce my
No.
safety margin?
Yes, you just reduced your safety margin.
Awesome. Now, if I still see high amperage loads, even though I've shut down my alternator, what is going to cause a high amperage drain if I've shut down my alternator? Some kind of
Oh
short, some kind of
my
damage to your electrical system. If I
Oh,
have
that
damage
is
to my electrical system, what am I risking?
fire, electrical fire.
I am risking an electrical fire. Am I going to die if my airplane's on fire?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Good.
probably, right? You don't really make it back from those, especially when you're, up at high altitudes or whatnot. It's kind of hard to recover from that. Um, so land as soon as practical. Reduction of safety margins. Land as soon as possible. Oh shit, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you recover from a spin? We'll talk about like the phases of a spin and what causes a spin later, but if you were to end up in a spin, what's your plan of action in the to recover?
Air. Um, so basically power down to idle, my ailerons neutral, elevator forward, but most importantly, opposite rudder. And you taught me something I hadn't heard, which is because like I had thought of this, like, how the hell am I going to know which way I'm spinning? I wouldn't know. I'd just be crapping my pants. And you're like, whatever rudder is resisting you, which
That-
is, I'm like, I'd not heard that.
and
You probably could. You probably just saved my life.
well, hopefully you never end up in a spin, right? Um, I've never been. Well, okay, students have put me into incipient spins, but um, I've never been in a fully developed spin unintentionally. So it's real easy to know which way you're spinning if you entered it intentionally, but very rarely do people enter spins intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
unless you're out there doing
Mm-hmm.
aerobatics. Now, let's talk about why we go through each step. All right. You covered rudder because, like, we covered it. I apparently covered it in a video you saw.
Mm-hmm.
No, now, why do we bring the power to idle?
I don't want to power. I don't want to give the spin more energy.
All right.
Is my first gut reaction.
It's not a bad gut reaction. What happens to the nose of the airplane when we apply power? Does it go up or down?
Well, now you got me. Like, it goes up when we apply power.
It does go up when we apply power. So if I, spins start with a stall. If I keep pushing the nose up after I stalled, am I going to recover from this stall?
I have no idea.
No, you're not, right? Because we need to reduce our angle of attack. That's one of the reasons. That's really the big reason why I pull the power to idle. It's to help get the nose down. It's to help let the nose come down. Because remember, this is just a smaller version of your airplane. When I apply power, it's really me pulling up on the nose of the airplane because the center line of thrust is below the center line of gravity.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Top Gun?
Yeah, loved it.
The flat spin. That's what happens when you don't pull the power out, right? We lose Goose, right? To be honest, I've never seen the movie, but I've seen enough clips of it to get the references.
Yes.
All right. Aileron's neutral. Why can't I just bank my way out of a spin?
I don't know. I can only assume that it's just the ailerons aren't going to have enough opposite force to stop the.
So
that's why rudder's so critical. But I don't know the answer to that.
Ailerons, we're going to leave them neutral. I can't just bank out of it because remember, we have adverse yaw, right? So if I try to bank out, like let's say I'm spinning to the left, right? I'm spinning like this, okay? And I try to just bank out of it. All I'm going to do is drop that inside aileron and make my spin tighter and faster, and you're probably going to take a nap.
Wow.
It's just going to increase your rate of rotation.
And it wouldn't matter which way you're.
Well, if you bank into it, it could slow down your rate of rotation. But again, your ailerons aren't big enough and they can't apply that much adverse yaw.
Okay.
Your wings are also stalled. So your ailerons aren't going to be doing much in the way of lifting. We talked about rudder. Elevator briskly forward is pretty straightforward. It's a stall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're trying to recover from a stall. Talked about that. Now, let's say we end up in IMC, right? Not necessarily that you just straight up punched into a cloud, but it was forecast to rain a little bit, but this rain has started to just come down, and now you're looking at like maybe 2 miles of visibility just because it's raining. What are you going to do?
I'm going to turn around. There's always these recommendations to fly above weather or below it. To be honest, my concern with flying above it is I believe that you're at risk of getting more icing on the wing or the potential for icing on the wings at the top of a cloud, and you don't know the cloud height. I guess I would just turn around and maintain my altitude.
All right. It's a great option. I don't ever recommend climbing because you're not going to outclimb icing. And if it's raining and you're somewhere where it's cold, you're going to encounter icing eventually. Like there's no question about it. You are going to enter icing conditions eventually, depending on where the cloud tops are. Also, you're a VFR pilot. You shouldn't be trying to punch through clouds. Right?
Who's good running? Yeah.
Also, don't descend. There was one instructor that started teaching his students like descend out of that kind of condition. I was like, are you stupid? Are you trying to kill your students? All right. Don't descend. Let's say you don't exit the IMC conditions after you turned around. You're still stuck in it. Okay. What are you going to do now?
Okay, if I can't descend, I'm really looking at my instruments.
Is there anybody you could talk to?
Yeah, oh God, I would call 121.5 or.
That's an option, right? 121.5, hey, VFR
if
pilot.
I'm close to home, I would call up, Sioux County traffic and say, Braden, pick up. on the C-tower. So,
I think maybe not contacting a CTAF, but the closest ARTCT, Air Traffic Radar Control Center, right? That's going to be your best bet. What kind of GPS do you have?
well, I have a Sentry in the plane,
Okay.
and so I can access ForeFlight and
Yeah, so you can use that nearest function on ForeFlight for your nearest
Yes.
ARTCC and tune that frequency in. Now, what are you going to tell them?
I would identify myself, and you're going to have to confess, I inadvertently went into inclement weather, and I'm flying under IFR conditions, and I am a VFR pilot, and could you please assist me with, getting home? I mean, I'd be so nervous, I can't imagine what I'd be saying. Would that be okay?
Well, and that's why we go through training, so that we can kind of mock these things up, so that you know what to do in the event that this happens, right? You're going to contact your closest ARTCC or ARTCC, and you're going to say, Kansas City Center, airplane 123. I am a VFR pilot in IMC conditions. I need vectors to the closest VFR airport, not home.
Oh, I love it.
I need I need vectors to the closest VFR airport, and they're going to give you directions to the closest VFR airport.
Okay. Oh, this is wonderful. VFR pilot in IMC. I need vectors to the closest. Okay, I'm going to remember that. I forget it.
Just make sure you let them know you are a VFR pilot, because if you just say, hey, Cessna 123, IFR conditions, I need vectors to the closest VFR airport, they're going to say, all right, advise when ready to copy clearance. And you're going to go, what does that mean?
Right,
Because they're trying to give you an IFR clearance.
Yes. Right? Okay, makes sense.
So just make sure, let them know you're a VFR pilot. Like the example I use, yes, technically I'm an IFR pilot, but I ended up, when I was bringing my airplane home from Kansas up to Green Bay, I was flying all the way home. It was hard IFR the entire way. I was doing VOR to VOR navigation. It was a shit show and a half. But then there was a storm between me and home, so I started deviating around it with Kansas City Center. They were the one talking to me, so they gave me a heading to put me on the other side of the storm from them. Well, the storm ended up blocking my radio communications with them, so I lost all communications with Kansas City Center on a heading. I didn't have a vector. I didn't have a route to go on. I didn't have a GPS to take me back to where I needed to be. All I knew was where I was at, the minimum safe altitude was below me. So I knew I wasn't going to smack any mountains. But then I grabbed my, I realized, okay, I've been on this diversion for a while. I don't have enough gas to get to my airport of intended landing. I can't get there. So I go to open up ForeFlight on my phone, and then I go to open up ForeFlight technically on my iPad, and apparently ForeFlight had dumped all of my charts because it tried to update when it got its last signal an hour and a half ago, when I wasn't paying attention because I didn't put my iPad on airplane mode. So I had no approach plates in my iPad. Same thing happened to my phone. So for all intents and purposes, I'm a VFR pilot. I have no way to get to the ground at this point. Right? So I ended up on 121.5 squawking 7600, and then an actual airliner low enough to hear me was transmitting between me and Kansas until I got them back, and they gave me vectors to a VFR airport. And the only reason they knew that airport was VFR is because there was crop dusters with their ADSB on, up and down doing their crop dusting thing at this airport, and it was like a 30-mile window of VFR.
Oh my God.
All right, so be honest with them. All I said was hey, Kansas, my iPad dumped all my approach plates. My phone did the same. I don't have any way to get to the ground. I need vectors to a VFR airport, or I need a radar approach, and you'll learn about that if you do instrument. It's I either need VFR airport or I need a radar approach. Just be honest with them. It's literally their job to make sure you don't die. I didn't get a pilot deviation. I didn't get in trouble. There was no paperwork to file. I was honest with them. You just do the same thing. All right.
So do you recommend always putting your devices on airplane mode to prevent? Is that something you do now all the time when you're flying?
Yeah. And I have paper backups.
I do too. I'm a paper girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I print off the airport. I make little notes. I'm like, okay.
That is perfect.
No.
One thing, just to be, a little cognizant of paper backups. If they're expired, that's a great way to fail your check ride before it even
Okay.
starts. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because your DPE is going to check them. And if you do have
Yeah.
expired charts in the plane, write for training use only on them.
Okay.
Congratulations. It's not intended for primary navigation.
Okay. Cool. Oh, this has been so awesome. All right.
Talked about spin recovery, all of that jazz. All right. Now, we didn't cover a couple other V speeds because it wasn't in the limitation section, because technically they're not limitations. What is VY? Like, define VY, not necessarily what the airspeed is, but what is VY?
Best rate of climb, which is 79 in plane.
Awesome. Now, what does that mean to you when you say best rate of climb?
I can cover the most. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
The way I think of it is I can cover more distance, whereas the VX, the best angles for overcoming obstacles. So I'm going to get more vertical, whereas with the rate of climb, I'm able to get more distance. I'm not necessarily worried about clearing an obstacle.
Right. So best rate of climb is height over time is the way I think of it. Right. Height over time.
Yeah.
Best angle of climb is height over distance. Right. It was pretty solid, right? Oh, you do have a turbulence penetration speed. It's 111. That's interesting.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Height over time, height over distance. Thank you.
Yep. Of course. Let me go to my POA. Now we're going to get into some airworthiness stuff, right? So what documents does your airplane need for it to be airworthy? Now, is this your personal aircraft or is this a school's aircraft?
So I do have my own plane, which is a horror story.
No, that's not a horror story.
Well, yeah.
Oh, it is? Is it that bad?
Well, no, this Cherokee Warrior is a trainer plane. So, I decided, hey, I'm going to buy my own plane, because I'm going to get a pilot's license and I'm going to fly my own plane. And I spent a year looking at planes and I decided to buy a European Shark. So I am paying an arm and a leg for insurance because there's only 4 Shark owners in the United States. It's the plane that Zara Rutherford flew around the world and broke the world record. And then her brother proceeded to do it. So she's the youngest female to fly around the world. She used a European Shark, and then her brother did it. And it just had everything I was looking for in a plane.
All right. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. I'm going to share my screen one more time. That?
Yep, that's my plane.
Oh, okay. All right, continue.
And I love that thing.
No judgment.
It's so cool. But it's like I've been flying an Arrow to get my complex time. And then I've spent over 20 hours in the Shark, and then I'm back to the Cherokee Warrior. And they all feel different. I would not advise that.
No.
I would not advise it. But, here I am. So, yeah.
Now, you say an arm and a leg. I'm always curious because I pay about $4,800 a year for insurance on mine. Yours is more than that? Oh my God.
Here's the problem. It's an experimental, and its classification might change with this Mosaic ruling, because it really is considered a complex plane. It's not a constant speed propeller, but it is a variable pitch propeller that's done electronically. It does have retractable gear, and then of course the electronic flap. So it's truly considered a complex plane. It does have a parachute. And the insurance industry doesn't really know what to do with the European Shark because unlike the Vans line, they have absolutely no experience with this plane. But we keep pointing out all of the great safety features, including like a Kevlar reinforced body, blah, blah, blah. I mean, people have literally landed this thing more than once on its belly and walked away. Completely, they don't even deploy the parachute. But so I was thrown off to a reinsurance company called Mach 3, and they're sort of the insurer of last resort. And I'm very happy and appreciative that they are actually giving me insurance at all. But complete hull coverage is over $15,000.
A year?
Yep. So I said, no thanks, I'll just take liability.
Oh.
So if I would have known all of this before I bought it, I don't know if I would have bought it. You know what I mean? Like this is the plane I want to fly. I just want to be able to get in my plane, get from point A to B without having like a twin engine, and go see my dad up in Staples, Minnesota, clean a toilet, make him soup, and come home.
Exactly.
And I don't need cargo. I'm not going to be carrying a bunch of luggage and all that. I just want to get from A to B as quick as possible. And it's just the parachute. It's got autopilot. Now, love the plane, but yeah.
I'm trying to see, like, I'm on their website right now. I'm looking for speeds on it. So it's a 100 horsepower Rotax, right?
Yeah.
And it cruises. Oh, that's kind of a fast. Well, no, that's kilometers. God damn it, where is maximum cruising speed? 300 kilometers. What's that in freedom units?
About 147, 48.
Okay. Now, I guess, like, I know this is a little off topic at this point, but it's such a unique airplane. Have you thought about doing like a bonanza?
Yes and no.
I feel like that's got to be mountains more affordable.
I know. But at first I really loved the idea that I could literally just fill it up with regular gasoline because it's a Rotax engine. But now, talking to one of my good buddy pilots that's a mechanic, he's like, no, you don't want to do that. Just always put 100 low lead because of there's a potential for vapor lock in the summer and sort of this caramelization process that can occur with regular gasoline. Plus everything around here is ethanol in it. But I like the fact that it's a 2015. Again, it comes with a parachute, Kevlar body.
Yeah.
I like the tandem seating. I mean, you sit in that cockpit and you feel like, it's just all open. It's really cool. The view is just, it's the whole reason I love aviation. It's like I'm up there and I feel like I'm in the cathedral of the sky. And, aviation to me is a form of worship. The way you get to see the earth and it's calming. I got the bug. Obviously my dad was a general aviator and both my brothers fly. And I had to put this dream on hold for over 20 years. So like you, I've accumulated over 100 hours and I still don't have my private pilot's license.
I guess I am starting to see the appeal. 162 top speed, 1,300 miles of range. That is asinine.
I can wear a diaper. Never make a pit stop.
That thing will outlast your bladder. Yeah, that's God.
I have to come up to Wisconsin. My brother's up in the Madison area, and I have a lake home in Canada. So eventually, I do want to fly into Sault Ste. Marie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll avoid Canada because I hear I need the radio license thing, but I guess it's really expensive to fly in Canada. Have you ever flown there?
No, but they got landing fees and stuff, and they have like weird, they have other ADS-B requirements that aren't required in the States. Yeah, that's why, like, if you look on like Trade a Plane up in Canada, you'll see some airplanes. You're like, why is that thing 30 grand? And then you're like, oh wait, that's 30 grand Canadian. Okay, still, why is that thing only, 35 grand? Why is that thing only 40 grand? And then you're like, oh wait, the import taxes and stuff. And like, the reason they're selling it is because they don't want to pay what's required to make it ADS-B compliant.
Oh.
Right. And now that I'm looking at your fuel consumption, 5.5 gallons per hour. I fucking wish.
I know, right? What are you burning? I can only imagine.
I can get it down to like 8.9, but I'm only doing like $1.05.
That's not bad. You got a huge plane. I mean,
don't get me, yeah, it is, and it has some useful load. Like that thing will, but it doesn't have a 1,300 mile range. I can push it to like 600 miles. If I fill the aux tanks and it's just me in it. When I was out flying with like Dirtbag Pilot and them, we'd go all over Wisconsin and I'd fill up like once. While they're in their little Cessna 152s, like, I got to stop for gas, man. It's like, I'll stop when I get home. I get 10% off for being a local at home. So I'm going to wait till I get home.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's well, you know what? You're going to have some other questions when it comes to like, yours being an experimental and the airworthiness, but let's talk about airworthiness of your training airplane.
Let's do it.
All right. What kind of documents are required in your training aircraft?
Well, the airworthiness certificate, your registration, weight and balance, and operating limitations.
All right. Now, what if there's some installed equipment that wasn't necessarily in it when it was manufactured? Is there any other kind of documentation you might need?
Yes, you would need the supplement. So we do have the supplement to the G5 in the plane as well.
All right. Make sure that's included, right, in the initial, because it is required, right? That's a required document. It shouldn't require prompting to ensure that you are aware that you need that document. And that's kind of what happened. Remember, a check ride isn't an opportunity for instruction. The check ride is an opportunity for evaluation. A DPE is really just going to ask the question and then stare at you deadpanned.
Okay.
All right. If you get it wrong, they're going to say, okay, so what other blah, 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 next question. If you get it right, they're going to go, okay, blah, 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 next question. All right.
Okay.
Now, have you ever seen you've got your own airplane, right? So you've seen the maintenance log of your airplane. Have you ever seen the maintenance log of an older aircraft?
Well, actually, this afternoon, I went over the maintenance log of this Cherokee Piper.
Awesome. So you've actually seen one. Now, what were you looking for when you went over that maintenance log? What things were you looking for to make sure that this airplane was safe, airworthy? You weren't going to get in trouble on your check ride for having an unairworthy airplane.
Yeah. It's funny because it's older. Obviously, it's built in the 80s. So there were 3 logs. And so I wanted to make sure that, it hasn't surpassed its 100-hour inspection. I wanted to make sure that things like the ELT has been inspected, the transponder, the static, pitot-static, all of that jazz. Everything was actually tabulated. It was was impressed. I was able to locate all of the pertinent information.
All right. So let's go over all of them. You've heard that acronym AV8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what's that? What's that first A?
Annual.
Right. So that needs to be done, annually. What's that next one? What's the V?
That's for the VOR. So if you're flying IFR, that has to be checked within 30 days of a IFR flight, I believe.
Yep. How do you check it? And it's not necessarily just IFR. If you intend on using it as your sole form of navigation, right? So if you plan on doing like a VFR cross country, but you plan on using a VOR as pretty much your primary form of navigation, that it needs to be checked as well, right? Because don't you want to make sure it's right?
Yeah.
Right. So VOR 30 days. What's that? Well, it's not an I. It's a 1 for 100 hour. We covered that one. What's the next one? It's the A, right?
AV8, that's the altimeter.
Yep.
Every 24 months, and the The transponder every 24 months, and then the ELT every 12 months.
Right now, there's a couple other evaluations for that ELT. So we have the ELT, the actual, equipment, the item itself, and then there's the battery inside it. How often does that thing need to be checked?
Well, I just know that the battery itself has to be replaced if one half of its useful life has been used or it's been used for one straight hour. Then you have to replace the battery.
Yep. Now, when you say half of its useful life, is that saying like, hey, my phone's at 50%, so I need to replace the battery? Or is that saying like, hey, I've got, this D cell battery that says it expires in 2034, so I need to replace it by 2029?
I would pick option B, but I don't
option
know.
B.
It's okay. I don't know. This is great.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, like a lot of people think, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Half of its useful life,
Yeah. What is?
Yeah. What is that? Like, I don't like, am I going to put a multimeter to my freaking ELT and yeah, that seems about right. That seems like 50%. No. All right. It's kind of funny. My ELT uses a 9-volt battery, because it's old. And, I put a little sticker on it that tells me when that battery is when the battery needs to be replaced. I just straight up put a sticker on the ELT.
Oh, nice.
And I look at it because it sits right next to me every time I fly, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's still good, right? So your aircraft, right? The training aircraft that you're in requires a 100-hour inspection because it's being used commercially. Now, when you eventually get into your European Shark, does that thing need a 100-hour inspection?
No.
Let's say you start renting it out to people. You don't tell your insurance, for one. Does it need a 100-hour inspection if you start renting it out to people?
Yes.
Yes, it sure does. Now, let's say you walk up to your Piper Cherokee, right? Your Warrior 2, and your G5 is dead. It died. Shenanigans. Is this airplane still airworthy?
Yes.
All right. Now, let's say that there's another piece of equipment. I don't know what. It's just another random piece of equipment. Where would you check to verify that this airplane is still airworthy with that piece of equipment inoperative?
91205, the FAR.
Okay. Is there anywhere else you check? So 91205. Go ahead.
Yep. Well, if my plane came with like a minimum equipment list.
Right. So 91205 is kind of a big regulation, and it covers a lot. But 91205 tells you to reference 91213 as well, and 91213 is the one that gives you that 8 tomato flames and flaps that we all memorize, right?
Okay. Yep.
But 91205 continues on by stating that you need to check airworthiness directives, type certificate data sheets, supplemental type certificates, kinds of operation equipment list, and minimum equipment list. Okay.
Yes. I forgot. Yeah, airworthiness directives. I knew that and I forgot. I'm sorry.
No, there ain't no reason to apologize, right? I tell every single student when we go into a training event, let's go fuck this up.
Aviate-A.
Yes.
It's not aviate, it's aviate-A for airworthiness directives.
Exactly.
Which I looked at. I just looked at them this morning in the plane. Oh, anyway.
It happens.
Okay.
All right. So airworthiness directives, you know about that. There's other pieces of equipment that can be installed on an airplane to, deal with the, safety concerns, right? Cessnas are a perfect example of airworthiness directive causing you to install another piece of equipment that has to continually operate in the aircraft. Cessnas, the seats slide back randomly on you as they get older because the holes wallow out where the seat pin goes. So you know how you got the seatbelt auto tensioners, when you pull on it real quick, it locks?
Yeah.
Right? So they installed one of those on the floor of the airplane and attached it to the seat so that if the seat slides back real quick, it locks the seat so that you don't pull the airplane into a stall right on takeoff.
Thank God.
right? But that's an airworthiness directive. So during my pre-flight, I need to verify that that auto tensioner is actually going to lock in the event that I need it. If it doesn't
Mhm.
lock, airplane's not airworthy. It's not part of 90. It's not part of A Tomato Flames flaps. It's not in the POH. It's not in the
That's
minimum equipment
perfect.
list. It is the airworthiness directive in the maintenance logbook. I'm pointing back there because that's where I hold my maintenance logbook.
Yeah.
Type certificate data sheets, obviously that's from the FAA when the aircraft was originally manufactured. Pretty much saying that, like, I can't take off one of the ailerons because I think it'll be fancier without one. Right?
Mhm.
It's also saying that I can't just randomly put whatever propeller I want on it. It has to be approved
Mhm.
in the type certificate data sheet or from a supplemental type certificate. Right?
Okay.
Have you ever heard of your aircraft? I don't think it's going to have any STCs, but you've heard of an STC, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Um,
I've heard them.
Actually, yours, there's an STC available for your aircraft that allows you to put it allows you to put pump gas in it. I don't recommend it. But that's another place where you would check to verify that you've got all the appropriate equipment. And then you've got kinds of operation equipment list. This is for the specific operations of the aircraft, and it's going to be in the POH, right? I use my aircraft for an example. In my kinds of operation equipment list, if I plan on operating on the water, my water rudder needs to work. If I
Got
don't
it.
plan on operating on the water, my water rudder can be gone. It's still
Okay.
airworthy unless I plan on operating in this kind of operation.
That kind of operation.
Make
Okay.
sense?
Yes.
Awesome.
Can I ask you a quick question on minimum equipment lists?
Go ahead.
Does that mean if a plane has a minimum equipment list, does it mean that there is something inoperative, but it's still airworthy? I don't quite understand the MELs.
So a minimum equipment list is the best way to explain it that I get students to memorize. The easiest way is it's a list of shit that can be broken and the airplane still be airworthy.
Okay.
All right. Now there's going to
Okay.
be specifics in that go into what are the new limitations of this aircraft. What is the way that you're going to operate this aircraft now? For example, the minimum equipment list for a CRJ 200 says if both packs are inoperative, the pressurization systems are inoperative, the airplane cannot be used at operations above 8,000 feet.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, like,
Got it.
we don't want
Yeah.
grandma passing out in the back,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
When we start getting into, I think part of a minimum equipment list for a 737 is if the one of the outflow valves are stuck, the airplane can't be used except for cargo.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. Now I will now remember this.
Yep. A lot of general aviation airplanes don't have minimum equipment lists. There's technically a minimum equipment list for a Cessna 172, but it's like 6 pages. Like there's not a whole lot of equipment in the airplane that can be broken, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not worth it. But when we start getting into airliners, right, there's a minimum equipment list for the coffee maker.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
It seems a little
Interesting.
ridiculous, but
Yeah.
it would be even more ridiculous to call an airplane unairworthy because the coffee maker doesn't work.
Right. Right.
All right.
Got it. Okay.
Now let's get into some regulations. Congratulations,
Okay.
you passed your private pilot certificate. What can you do now that you couldn't do before?
I can carry passengers. I can fly at night. I get to fly up to Staples, Minnesota. Make soup for my dad.
Goals, right? Goals.
Yep.
Right. Now, you can also fly into Bravo without an endorsement.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Is there any way that you can make money as a private pilot, or at the very least, kind of make up some of the cost?
No. Mm-mm. No.
So let's say me and you go fly just for shits and giggles. I can't give you, I don't know, $50 for gas.
No, it has to be prorated.
Okay.
So I can only collect 50% of the cost of the fuel, the oil. Like, let's say there was some sort of a rental fee at the airport or a fee to, house the plane if we stayed overnight. I could only split those costs associated with the trip with you,
All right.
50-50.
Now, let's say that there's, I don't know, there's an operation that's saying, hey, fly your airplane to take puppies to their forever home. Can they cover the cost of gas for that?
So is this a nonprofit or is it
Yep.
a charity event or?
It's a nonprofit. Nonprofit saying, hey, I got 5 puppies that need to go to their forever home. Your airplane burns 10 gallons an hour. It's going to take you 5 hours to do it. I'm going to give you, I'm a fill up your airplane so that you can get there. Is that fair? Is that all right?
I want to say yes, but I am not sure about that. So I'm going to look that up.
You can. You can.
Okay.
You can fly for a nonprofit, right?
Okay.
So that the times where you can, I don't know. I hate to use the term receive compensation, but that's kind of what it is.
Okay.
Is search and rescue operations that's sanctioned by a government agency, right? So you actually have to be asked by a government agency to help in this search and rescue operation. You can't just go start a search and rescue operation and then bill your local police department. Right?
No, I'm going to bill the Department of Transportation in Iowa because of their stinking sales use tax.
Exactly.
Are you?
You're fine.
Send them an invoice. Get all a search and rescue.
Exactly. I was like, I helped your search and rescue. I didn't find shit, but I helped. Here's your bill. You can fly for a charity event or a nonprofit, right?
Okay.
Or you can act as a demonstration pilot in the operation of sale of an aircraft if you have more than 200 hours. Right? So let's say you get a job at like this shark company and they want you to start demonstrating airplanes for them. Right? They can pay you as a pilot to do that as long as you got more than 200 hours. Right?
Okay.
Now let's say, right, you keep bringing up your dad, right? Let's say he comes to visit you. He hops on an airplane, flies to like the closest Bravo airspace to you, right? He grabs a rental car, drives out to you, spends the day with you. You take him flying and whatnot. He has a blast, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to return my rental car out here. I'll give you $100, and you can fly me to the Bravo airport again, and just drop me off, and I can hop on my flight instead of me having to drive all the way back. Is that okay?
I would just say, well, I can only split the cost of me flying my plane with him with that particular trip.
So, do you have a common purpose? Are you going to that airport with a common, are you going to that destination with a common goal in mind? Or is
Yes.
the common goal is to provide transportation?
Yes.
Now, can you provide transportation from point A to point B with the sole purpose?
Yeah, but not for hire.
So,
I mean, I got to be.
The FAA views flight time as compensation. So, can you take people from point A to point B for compensation?
No,
right? If you're going with a common purpose, then it's fine. If you're both hopping on an airplane at that Bravo airport to fly somewhere else, good to go. But the fact of just flying from point A to point B to drop him off counts as carriage.
Okay.
Which requires a commercial operator certificate. I know it seems stupid. We do the shit like that with our cars all the time, and I don't need a tax. I don't need a commercial driver's license. I don't need a taxi medallion to do Uber. But given that the FAA views flight time as compensation, and you don't have a common purpose for operating the aircraft to that destination, it would technically count as private carriage, given that you didn't offer this to the public, but you still provided transportation from point A to point B, with the sole purpose of providing that transportation.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And I know it seems so weird, and the only reason I bring this up is because I've dropped off my wife. She's an airline pilot. I dropped her off at Green Bay to go to work while I was out. I was going to go out flying that day anyway. Right. So me and her hopped in the airplane. I dropped her off at Green Bay and then fucked off to wherever I was going.
Right.
Was that technically illegal? if she wasn't also an owner of the aircraft, yes, that would have technically been illegal. But given that she was also an owner, right? And I know it seems so innocuous that like I should be able to use my private airplane to drop my buddies off places. Nope.
Can't do it. Wow.
Right? It's really weird. But given that she was also an owner, technically, you know, she's rated for the aircraft. She was technically the one flying herself. And I was,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
So, if you were...
Interesting.
I know a lot of people don't think about it, and it seems really innocuous, right? That like, I'm just going to drop my dad off at the airport. Why does that matter, right? Now, is there any airspace as a private pilot that you're not allowed in? There's technically 3.
Class A airspace.
All right.
There's 3?
Yep. So Class A is one of the normal.
Well, I would think inclement weather.
Well, that's not necessarily airspace, right? So Class A, that's a normal use airspace.
Oh, wait a minute. I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I'm being stupid. Okay, so Class A, because I'm not instrument rated. And then I cannot fly in restricted areas. So we have to talk about special use airspace. Prohibited. I cannot fly in. Restricted, you'd have to get permission from the authorizing agency. But I don't think that's easy to do.
What about TFR?
Yeah, temporary flight restrictions. So let's say,
so
President Biden's in Iowa.
Right.
That's right.
As a private pilot, you're never going to get cleared into Alpha. You're never going to get cleared into Prohibited. And you're never going to get cleared into a TFR.
TFR.
Right? Restricted, you can get a clearance into it. Can't you? Like, it's possible.
It's possible.
Probably not going to happen, but it's possible. Prohibited, not a chance in hell. TFR, nah. Ain't going to happen. Right? Now you're going to Delta airspace, right? You're just flying along. What kind of VFR visibility, cloud clearance and visibility do you need for Delta airspace?
3 miles and 152, 1,000 above, 500 feet, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below the cloud, and 2,000 horizontal.
Awesome. Now, you're at a Class Delta airport, right? You flew to that airport, weather was fine. You hung out there, got lunch or what have you. And then you came back to the airport. Ceilings had dropped down to 2,000 feet with 2-mile visibility, but it seems to be localized. Your destination, and even just a couple miles away from the airport, it's clear in a million. It's really just localized here, a 2,000-foot ceiling and 2-mile visibility. Is there anything that you could do to get out of this airport?
Wow. Request special VFR
That's
flight
exactly it.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to do this at night, what else would you need?
Well, I need 3 miles of visibility and 152. But talking it's below that? Can I request special VFR at night?
Yeah, that's really the big question. Yeah.
Boy, I don't know. My Shark can't fly at night. It's one of the, but I don't know. But what is the answer to that question? I have no.
For you to request a special VFR at night, you need to be instrument rated. But then at that point, just get an instrument, just file an instrument flight plan. Right?
Okay.
Really? That thing can't fly at night? Oh, I guess.
No, it's not. It's one of the limitations. No IFR, no night flying.
Shenanigans. Now, let's get into some aerodynamics, right? So far you've been doing, you've been doing pretty good. Trying to think of anything, every student struggles with 91205 and 91213, mostly because it's just a big regulation and nobody ever actually reads it. Like, I'm not going to lie. I had like 117 hours going in for my private pilot check ride. I could recite A tomato flames and flaps, 91205, 91213, AD, TCDS, STCS, KOEL, MEL. Anybody ask me whatever the fuck any of that meant? No idea. I could recite it like the best of them. Anybody asked me one question deeper, I was gone. I was a puddle of knowledge. Okay. So let's get into some aerodynamics. What do flaps do for us?
Oh, I love flaps.
Everybody does.
Flaps change the camber of the wing, so you get increased lift, and with that, and obviously drag. But you basically can fly the plane at a lower airspeed and steeper descents. It allows for steeper descents.
Awesome. You answered all of the follow-up questions as well. So moving on, what is a stall?
A stall is when you exceed the critical angle of attack.
All right. What happens to the airflow over the wing as you reach or exceed the critical angle of attack?
It gets disrupted and you lose lift.
All right. Now, spins start with a stall, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to spin every time I stall. So what's going to happen? What do I need to do to enter a spin? What do I need to be concerned about?
One wing is stalling more than the other, I believe, is what creates a spin.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, how do I cause that?
Well, this is what's got me a little nervous, is I found out that the DPE likes to institute power off stalls by not just going nose up, so power off, nose up, but also at a 20-degree angle.
Okay.
Which makes me a little nervous because a Cherokee Piper is not like a Cessna. You can spin, but you cannot spin a Cherokee Piper. And I'm just a little, I just don't want to, even though I want to do upset training, I'm like, I really don't want to do this in a Cherokee Piper. I would think stalling out crooked sets you up for a spin.
So stalling out with bank, it's not going to set you up for a spin. Stalling out uncoordinated in a bank is going to set you up for a spin. All right.
Yes.
So how do we define uncoordination? You could look at the doctor, engineer response. The best way to explain uncoordination is the tail is not tracking behind the nose in the direction of travel. Right?
Yes.
The reason the DPE is having you bank while doing your stalls is he's trying to simulate the most likely point in which you're going to enter a spin, which is going to be the base to final turn. All right.
There you go.
That is where most of them are going to happen, is in the base to final turn. So that's what's happening. The best way to do this, in my recommendation, would be start your stall, start your procedure slightly off from a headwind, so that when you start your turn, you end up turning into the headwind. So you end up with that straight airflow. Now, if you do drop a wing, do we use aileron or rudder to recover? Rudder. Do not use aileron. Aileron's just going to make it worse. Okay. Don't be concerned about it. Go practice it. Right.
Yeah.
And remember, instruction is not the time to beat yourself up about not meeting the standards. Instruction is the time for you to learn by fucking it up time and time again. No lesson should ever be set up with the idea that you're going to be perfect, right? We're always ready to learn. So what are the 4 phases of a spin?
Oh, I was just reviewing this. And I can't remember. I know that there's incipient recovery. And there's the building phase.
Well, there's the entry.
Forget the other 2. I'm sorry. It was something incipient recovery.
So entry.
Oh, that's it. Entry.
Yep. Entry. That's that stall. That's that uncoordinated stall that you're afraid of. Right.
Okay.
Then we have our incipient. That's really when the wing's over and we start a couple rotations. We're kind of tumbling a little bit. It's going to be about 1 to 3 rotations. Your airspeed is going to be slightly increasing up to just above or just below stall speed, depending on which direction you're traveling. Then we have our fully developed. Right? This is when we're stuck in the rotation. This is when we have one wing stalled more than the other, causing an auto rotation of the aircraft. And then we have our recovery, which we talked about earlier. Make sense?
Love it. Yes.
All right. And I believe all of this is, if you really want a reference, you're going to go to the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, chapter 5, I believe. Or are you
Yes.
using the ASA book?
No, I'm
Oh, you're using well, so the chapters might be a little off because they just recently updated the PHAC. That's not the most up-to-date one.
oh, dang it.
So the chapters might be a little off. Aerodynamics of flight hasn't changed. Last time I checked, the laws of physics haven't changed.
Yeah, it'd be 5. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Yeah,
Alright.
I've got so much stuff to review. This is great. Thanks.
Of course. Now, let's get into what is adverse yaw and why does it happen?
Adverse yaw happens because, so let's say I'm banked into a turn. This wing here has more lift. And so it's actually pulling the plane in that direction.
Yeah, because
My understanding,
what's a byproduct of lift?
drag. It's also drag.
Yep.
So those two components are kind of pulling the plane in that direction.
That's exactly it. And if you ever get the opportunity to go fly a glider, try and bank without the rudder, and they crank over to like 30 to 40 degrees of adverse yaw. It is absolutely insane. If you ever want to see real adverse yaw, go fly a glider, give it a little bit of bank, and watch that nose just whip right. It's insane. Gliders are an absolute blast. That's my next rating that I'm planning on. I just have to find
That's
a
so
school.
cool.
Now, let's talk about some turning tendencies. Technically, the FAA doesn't call them left turning tendencies anymore. They just call them turning tendencies because they're not always going to the left. What are the turning tendencies?
You're talking about like P factor,
Yeah.
slipstream. Okay.
Well, there's 2.
It's P factor, slipstream, gyroscopic, precision, and torque.
Yep. Gyroscopic precession, not precision.
Precession.
Yep.
God.
So let's talk through them. What is P factor?
Oh, that's actually the most prominent cause of the left turning tendencies. The only way that it makes sense to me in my head, and this is going to probably sound so stupid. So I'm envisioning I'm in a canoe and I've got the paddle and it's acting like a propeller, and I got to scoop. So as I'm scooping up the water and I'm sitting on the front of that, what's going to happen to the front of that canoe? It's going to start to go this way. So it has to do with the descending blade grabbing more air than the ascending blade, and so it causes the plane.
Yeah.
It's the left turning
Yeah.
tendency.
So it's really the descending blade generating more thrust than the ascending blade.
The ascending blade.
No, descending.
Okay.
Descending. The blade that's
Descending
going down is the one
down
that's
is grabbing more air than the ascending.
Yes, and it's only a factor when you're pitched up, right? Because it's the propeller's angle of attack. The descending blade has a greater angle of attack while you're pitched up than the ascending blade. And that's it. When we have a greater angle of attack, we generate more we generate more lift. Well, since it's a wing tilted on its side, we call it thrust. Right? So what's torque?
Okay, I think about my mixer. And the reason it has suction cups on it. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly it. Now you brought up slipstream. It's spiraling slipstream. There's a couple different types of slipstream when it comes to airplanes. You got spiraling slipstream and accelerated slipstream. So what is spiraling? You're going to learn about accelerated slipstream when you go get your multi-engine rating, if you ever do that.
Okay.
But what is spiraling slipstream? Why is that a left turning tendency?
because it's the way it's the way the wind comes off the wings and it wraps itself around the fuselage and it ends up hitting the tail on the left side.
All right.
So,
So it's the air that comes off the propeller, not the wings.
oh, okay. I thought it was going around the body and okay,
Yep.
off the propeller.
Yep. So it's the
It
wind.
starts off the propeller.
Yeah. So it is still moving about the body, right?
Yeah.
Around the body, but it's the
Mhm.
tornado that you're thinking of, the little spiral that you're thinking of is coming off of the propeller, right? You've stood behind an
Got it.
airplane that's
Uh,
running, right?
yeah.
The tornadoes off of the wingtips, that's wake turbulence. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, what about gyroscopic precession? This is the one that a lot of students kind of struggle with. So talk me through gyroscopic
Mhm.
precession.
If you were to take a spinning top and ping it, it's literally, and it's spinning like this. I believe it's literally going to shoot off at a 90-degree angle in the direction it's already spinning.
So
Is kind of how again, this stuff gets to be like, it's hard to think about it. But it's just the action on a gyro, like a spinning. Yeah, I don't know. I probably failed.
no, you're fine. So it's the doctors, the way that they explain it is a spinning object with
Okay.
mass, right? If you apply a torque to a spinning object with mass, the resultant force will
Okay.
be felt 90 degrees in the direction of rotation. All right. So let's put this into some
yeah.
context that we actually understand. You've ridden a bicycle before, right?
Yep.
So when we turn a bicycle, do we just crank the handlebars or do we lean?
You lean.
Right? So what's a tire?
Yeah.
It's a spinning object with mass, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when I lean on my bike, I'm applying a torque to it, belt 90 degrees in the direction of rotation, I turn.
Wow. Oh God, I like this. Okay,
Now-
I'm gonna write this bicycle analogy.
N-
Okay.
Now, let's take that into the context of a propeller, right? A propeller is a spinning object with mass. So when I pitch up when I'm flying straight and level, there's no torque being applied to that spinning object with mass, no gyroscopic precession. Okay. But if I was to pitch up, that's like me grabbing the top of the propeller and pulling back on it. Okay.
Yeah.
So 90
Yeah.
degrees in the direction of rotation of my propeller, it drops down to the side and it pulls on it. So gyroscopic precession, when I pitch up, is actually a right turning tendency
Wow.
in your airplane when the propeller's spinning to the right. If you were in an airplane where the
Yeah.
propeller's spinning to the left, it's different, right?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I love this
Now,
bicycle.
let's get into some aeronautical decision making. Do you remember the hazardous attitudes?
Yeah.
All right, so let's roll through them. Right?
Okay.
Talk me through them.
Macho. I'm writing them down. Just anti-authority, resignation. Macho, anti-authority, resignation. God, I'm having a brain fart right now. Hang on. Macho, anti-authority, resignation, invulnerability, anti-authority, invulnerability, and impulsivity.
Awesome. Now,
Mhm.
I'm going to look at my little timer real quick. So we've been at this
Yeah.
for about an hour and 45 minutes. You feel like
I've
you're a little bit tired?
exceeded my time.
What's up?
I've exceeded my time.
No.
So-
Don't worry about that. What I was getting at is that you notice how you're getting a little tired. We've been asking a lot of questions. It's kind of getting
Yeah.
a little more difficult to respond. Recognize
Yeah.
that on your check ride. Take a break. There ain't nothing stopping you from taking a break on your check ride. It's your
Am I
check
allowed
ride.
like 10 minutes or?
Yeah, take a break.
Wow.
Can I
Okay,
get 5
cool.
minutes? I'm gonna go get some water. I'm gonna go eat a snack.
Great.
Do you want anything?
Got it.
Right? DPEs are allowed to are supposed to offer you breaks for what's the word? Biological needs, right? Which is,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. Good thing.
take a break. It's
Okay.
it's your check ride, not their check ride. It's your check ride.
Got it.
Okay. Now, if they just asked you a really difficult question and you're like, I need a break, obviously we know what's going on there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But if you're getting to this point where you're like, oh, I know them. What are they? They're right on the tip of my tongue. That's the moment to take a
That's
break.
a sign.
Right?
Okay.
But
Got
you
it.
got them all eventually. What's the cure for anti-authority?
The cure for anti-authority is, well, I would just articulate it by saying, I'm not the authority. I don't know it all, and I do have to follow the rules.
There it is. Follow the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like to add something right at the end of it. Follow the rules. They're usually written in somebody else's blood. Because they are. Like they very often are. Remember, the FAA is a very responsive organization. They're not a proactive organization. They respond to tragedy. They do not prevent tragedy. So when there is a rule, it's usually written because something horrific has happened.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, what about impulsivity? How do we respond to impulsivity?
That would be my weakness. I'm just going to admit it. Slow down. Make sure you're slowing down and going through your checklist. There's no rush to be anywhere. You can't just assume you can skip over a step or be impulsive. It sets you up for risk.
Mm-hmm. A lot of students think they need to be at 95 knots or 100 knots the entire check ride unless they're in a maneuver. Slow down. If you're getting behind the airplane, slow down. Don't be impulsive about it. Slow the airplane down.
Okay.
My CRJ 200 type rating, I got a little behind. I slowed the airplane down to approach speed like 5 miles out from the runway.
Nice.
I'm not going to fail my check ride because I'm a little bit behind. Let me slow down and get this thing back to where it needs to be. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was operating a CRJ 200, I got behind the airplane and I went around. Right. There's no need to force an airplane onto the ground ever.
Yep.
I filed some paperwork, got a call from the chief pilot, and they said, why'd you go around? I said, I was just furloughed for 6 months. This is my first flight back on the line. Sorry, I was a little slow. That was the end of the conversation.
Wonderful.
Right? So just keep that in mind. You're never going to get in trouble for going around. What about invulnerability? How do we cure invulnerability?
Stuff can happen to me. I am not invulnerable.
And I'm not going to lie, I fell victim to this one. I thought I was good. I had gone through 2 engine failures, and both of them I recovered from and then made it back to pavement. And then the third one happened, and I ended up in the dirt. I'm like, oh shit, this can happen.
You've had 3 engine failures?
Yeah, when you fly as many airplanes as I have.
Oh my God.
And, 2 out of 3, I made it to pavement, so we're fine.
Wow.
But it can happen to you. You can end up at one that's not going to make it back to the pavement. Okay. You can end up in a dangerous situation. So don't accept undue risk. I don't fly other people's dumpy airplanes anymore. I only fly my dumpy airplane.
I love that. Okay.
Yep. So, and I know it can seem really, what's the word I want to use? It can be really tempting to go hop into other cool airplanes. You don't know who's doing maintenance on that thing.
Right.
Right. Especially when you start getting into the experimental category, like no shame on your airplane. I don't know anything about your airplane. I'm not getting in it. 2 out of the 3 engine failures I've had have been in experimentals, so I'm not.
Wow.
But when it comes to other people's experimentals, maybe reevaluate on whether or not you really want to get in that thing. Because who can do the maintenance on it? Well, if they built most of it, they can. Right?
Yeah, actually, there was that accident that just occurred. It was a kit plane. Mine is not a kit plane. It is actually manufactured, but still, I get your point. Wow.
Yeah. So, macho. What do we? How do we respond to macho?
Um, macho is, yeah, I'm gonna like push the plane to the limits, and it's like, no, you have to stay within, your placarded rates. Don't be stupid about exceeding weight, for example. Oh, he can make it, or that macho and invulnerability are closely related. But I think a macho attitude, you're going to try and push the limits of the plane, show off.
And it's not just necessarily exceeding the limitations of the aircraft. A Cessna 170, or sorry, a barrel roll can technically be done at 1G. If you're good enough, you can technically do a barrel roll at 1G, which means it's within the G loading limitation of a Cessna 172. Should you really be doing it though? No, right? That's macho, right? Taking chances is foolish, right? Resignation, right? How do we cure for resignation? I know what's the cure to help with resignation?
Well, if you're ever in a situation like you've been in 3 times, the antidote is I can make it. I can run through my checklist and I can do everything I can to mitigate risk. I don't have to just throw up my hands and go, okay, I'm going to die.
Yeah. None of the, Jesus take the stick. Fuck it. I'm out. Which like is there was an Atlas flight where that literally happened. You can hear them on the voice recorder praying. They resigned. They were done. They straight up went, Jesus take the fucking wheel. And it was a very, I hate to say it was a simple problem, but it was. They just didn't read what the autopilot was doing. And they buried it into the ground at 7,000 feet per minute.
Good God.
All right. Do not resign. There's always a procedure. What I like to add to this one, resignation, is follow your procedures.
Yes.
They are the way out. There's 99% of the time there's a solution. As long as the airplane is still in one piece, there is a solution. The airplane starts losing pieces, maybe it's time. But right. Now let's get into some aeromedical factors, right? Let's talk about hypoxia. What are the 4 different types of hypoxia?
Hypothermic hypoxia, histochemical, stagnant, and hypoxic hypoxia.
Awesome. So what is hypoxic? Like what kind of situation would you end up with hypoxic hypoxia?
Altitude, you're way up high and with no oxygen. So you'd be over 12,500 feet with no oxygen.
Yep. Now what about hypemic? What would cause hypemic hypoxia?
That would be an example of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Perfect. Now stagnant.
G's.
Yep.
Picking on G's.
Yep. G loading, or like sitting on a chair that's really uncomfortable. Like, have you ever sat in like an office chair where like the front of it broke down, so that little bar right there is digging into your legs and then your feet get tingly?
Yeah.
That's stagnant hypoxia as well.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a great, yeah.
And when we start getting into like really old dumpy Cessnas, it's a very common thing because there's a big metal bar that runs along the front of that seat. And when that foam breaks down, you can very likely end up with stagnant hypoxia with your feet all tingly because you're riding around in a shit wagon.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Love it.
Now, what about histotoxic?
That would be drugs.
Right.
Impairing alcohol and just drugs in general.
Right.
Probably not a good idea to be snorting coke before you fly or meth.
Now, it's not necessarily just immediately before flying, right? If I'm,
right.
If I'm, smoking, like, because, I smoked all through Afghanistan and whatnot. So I could fall victim to this because I have caused tissue damage due to poison or drugs. Means that when the oxygen gets to my cells, my
Mhm.
cells can't do anything with it due to damage,
Mhm.
right? Hypemic is, let's say I smoked right before the flight. Now a bunch of nicotine and carbon monoxide is attached to my blood cells. So now the
Mhm.
oxygen, even though it gets there, can't do, has nothing to bind to.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, let's get into your cross country. SPW to MLE, right?
Yes.
All right, let me pull up that real quick. I need to put a button for this. There we go. Can you see this real quick? Or can you see this?
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Now we don't need to go over all the different waypoints and whatnot. Instead of SPW, we're just gonna go over any airspace or any kind of questions you might have along this route. Okay. So right at your airport, what airspace is it on the ground?
E.
What's up?
E. It's E as in echo.
Echo, right? Now, why is it E and not golf like it is damn near everywhere else?
Right. Well, when I look at the entryways on G, I can only assume. I don't know, but does it support instrument approaches? Is that why?
Well,
What?
what I'm really just asking is how do you know by looking at the section?
Oh, the dashed magenta circle.
Yep. And you are right. It is a matter of supporting instrument approaches. That's why it also extends through these little corridors right here. These
Yeah.
little cutout sections. There's approaches into this airport. I don't know which ones. I mean, I guess we could look. Oh, wrong button. Yeah, whatever. Now, what is this purple and dashed or purple with lines? What is this depicting?
That is the Crypt North Military Operations Area.
All right. So, what do I need to be worried about when it comes to an MOA or a military operation area?
You have to be very cognizant of military activity. They could be doing training. I did note that it is limited to 8,000 upwards to 17,999 feet MSL. I'm going to be flying at 6,500, so I'm going to stay under any sort of military activity. But in general, you do want to be very cautious when flying into any MOA.
Awesome. What is this?
What?
Well,
I have no idea what that is.
so
Is that like a wildlife? I have to look at my chart supplement.
this one is actually it's just sometimes water. The little dots with the white, the little blue dots with the
Yeah.
white, sometimes water. This one's water. This is sometimes water.
Oh, so it's like a
Dry lake bed.
pond or something that dries. Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Learn something.
It sucked to fail that one on the check ride because you would like me looking over the chart supplement and all this other. Like, I have no idea what the fuck that is. I got nothing, man.
Dude, no.
I don't even know where to look.
I don't know what to do with my hands or my brain. Sorry.
That's why I ask that one all the time because a lot of students look at it and go, I don't know what the fuck that is. Stop asking me dumb questions. No.
It's there to stump people on their check ride.
Exactly what it is. It's the stumper. What's this? This little, I don't want to say the word.
Parachuting activity.
Right. So if I'm flying here, is that safe or should I be over here?
Yeah, I would not fly around parachuting activity.
Yep. So on a sectional, what side of the airport they're on is supposed to be where the drop zone is.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're on this side, you should be safe. Right.
Okay.
But again,
I didn't know that.
wind
Okay.
can obviously push those meat missiles around. I mean, parachuters. Not. Sorry.
Okay.
Why are these ones yellow? Like this town right here is yellow, but this one's not.
It's the size of the town.
It's not necessarily the size of the
I thought
town.
it was the size.
It's
And
the
I
fact that
don't.
it's visible at night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? Because like let's look at Lyons. That's not a very big town. Ain't no way Lyons is any bigger than Rosalie or Wath Hill. Like Lyons is a tiny little place. Okay. It's because they have enough lighting that it is visible and identifiable at night.
Okay.
Right?
It's amazing.
What is this? VR 541.
Where are you at on this here? Ooh, Victor Airway.
Is it a Victor Airway?
Isn't it? No, it's a visual. It's a military route. And because it's 541, it's 3 digits, which means they're, oh, I'm going to get this wrong. They're flying at or below 1,500 feet, and it's VFR and it's military. Is that right?
Way
No.
too much. Way too
Oh,
much.
okay.
It's a
Okay.
visual, it's a military visual training route.
Visual.
Right?
Visual training route. Okay, military visual training route.
The follow-up question is probably going to be, can I use these as navigation? Can I, like, it's a visual route, which means there's visual waypoints along it. Can I use it for my visual flight cross country? No.
Like fly in it? No.
Yeah, like fly along it, right? Because
No.
if we look at them, it's using pretty identifiable points for turns. Right? So it might, you're like, it's good enough for the military. It's good enough for government work, right?
Okay.
Now, you see how this airport right here, Tecuma, you see how it's filled in, right? It's a solid circle. Why is this one an empty circle? This one right here.
That does not have any discernible cement runway. Oh shit.
Close.
No. I should know this. I'm like, I gotta. Other than hard surfaced runway.
Yep. No discernible paved surface other than hard surface runway, right? And the only reason I bring it up is it's not necessarily saying that the entire airport is without paved surfaces, right?
Okay.
There's an airport up near me that all the taxiways are paved, but there ain't a single paved runway. So if you don't know that that's what that means, you look there and go,
makes no
why are these
sense."
runways so short?
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
It makes sense for them because they don't want jet traffic.
Okay.
Like they chose to not pave it to prevent jets.
Wow.
Because it's a tiny little island, a bunch of, like there's like 500 people that live on the island. They don't want assholes with their jets landing there, right? If, Jim Bob and his Piper Cub wants to come up here for lunch, have at it. They don't want somebody in their Citation or their Vision Jet coming to bother their 500, person community.
Cool.
It's actually kind of funny because like they even have like snow plows and stuff that are designed for plowing off of grass. It's hilarious. Like they've put a lot of money and infrastructure into taking care of a grass runway.
Wow.
Now, what do these little ticks mean?
There's fuel available.
Services, fuel. Yep. What's that star?
There's a beacon.
What's this star? That little asterisk right there.
Oh, the airport is operated part-time.
Pilot controlled lighting. Pilot controlled
Oh,
lighting.
shit. Damn it. Oh, pilot controlled lighting.
All right.
Straight by the L, duh.
How long is the longest runway at this airport?
3,800 feet.
Awesome. What is this blue 23 mean?
That's a maximum elevation figure.
Right? So what does it do for you? If I was
It tells me, yeah, I don't want to fly under 2,300 MSL in that area.
Right? So how much clearance is this going to give me estimated from the highest obstacle?
I think it's 100 feet, but it could be 400. There's a margin, there's a safety margin. So if you're flying at 2,300, you're not going to run into anything. But I wouldn't mess around with it.
No, I believe it's about 300.
300. Okay. All right.
Now I'm sitting right here over Oakland. Right? Can you see that?
Yeah.
I'm just making. Okay. Yep. Now, what radial am I on from the Scribner VOR at Oakland?
Oh, you're on the is it 30 if I can see right?
Yep, 030, right? Now, if I wanted to
Yep.
fly to the Scribner VOR, what would I tune in to my CDI?
030 heading?
So a 030 heading, where's the heading going to take me? The 030 heading is going to take me off that way, isn't it?
Oh, excuse me. No. I would tune my VOR to what is it? 111 point. What's the
So it's not the frequency, right? The actual CDI. So you have an HSI, right? Because you have the G5.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know how. Yes.
So-
Forget what I just said. That was wrong. I would tune in this number to the nav,
Okay.
and then I'd turn my needle until the from to to goes to a 2, and then I line up that needle in the middle, and then that's the heading I would fly.
All right. Now, let's say you're doing your cross country and you plan for a
Mhm.
specific radial to track inbound, right? If I planned on doing it like this, right? For some reason, I'm doing my VFR flight plan and I'm going to come out here to Oakland, right? I'm going to then track to this VOR. And then I'm going to track outbound on this radial to just a beam Blair executive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So to track inbound from Oakland, I wouldn't put the 030 because that's the radial out from the VOR. For me to have a track inbound, I need to tune the opposite. I need to put the opposite on my
God.
CDI.
Okay, hang on. I got to take a note of this. Obviously, VORs are my weak spot. Okay, so it's the opposite is 2. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, with an HSI, it gets really easy because you just follow the arrow. Right?
Okay, so opposite is 2, but I want to understand this. So I'm actually tracking on, okay, I see. And then the from
would be the outbound radial, which for this area would be 181.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Wait, no. So opposite is 181.
So inbound, set the reciprocal of the radial that you are on. Right? So add
Okay.
180. Outbound, just set the outbound VOR.
Okay.
The reason is you're gonna have to answer some of the questions like this on your written.
Yes. Yes. So I'm gonna make a little graph here. So all right. Okay. Got it. This has been very helpful.
All right. Last one on the sectional.
Sweet.
What's this flag?
Nav point,
Visual,
navigational aid, visual waypoint.
Visual waypoint, right?
Point.
ATC knows where these are as well. Okay. Any questions that you have kind of about this route that you're going to be planning?
No, I mean, I've identified enough waypoints. I've just made the decision to fly around Omaha Class C for a couple of reasons. I noted in the NOTAM for Millard, there's jets flying at 3,000, so that's something I have to be cognizant of. Plus, there's a tower in the Class C airspace that's 2,500 feet MSL, which is that towers just freak me out. And so I'm just I don't have to, I'm just going to go around the Class B airspace. I can avoid those towers. But I just want to be very cognizant of the pattern altitude there, which would be, around 2000, it's 2051. And where the floor is of the Class C airspace, just being cognizant of what's flying over me at 3,000 feet. So I'm just trying to be very safe and minimize things that I have to, I want less distractions.
Exactly, right? Best way to try and keep yourself focused, but keep yourself ahead is focus on the next two things. What's the two most important things in an airplane? The next two things. Okay.
Okay.
If I'm, way out here halfway through my cross country, the next two things aren't necessarily my landing checklist, right? It's going to be a fuel calculation to make sure that I have enough gas and I haven't like miscalculated my fuel planning. But if I'm, right here about to enter the pattern, my next two things are traffic, pattern, altitude, right? Doesn't matter what ground frequency is. I don't need to be worried about ground frequency.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. What's the next two things?
Perfect.
All right. Let's get into some weather. What would you call the most accurate weather report?
Well, a METAR?
Right. So a METAR, it's a report, but it could be up to 59 minutes old, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Now, if somebody had just landed and you asked them, how's the weather up there? And they were like, oh, it's a fucking disaster. It's bumpy. It's rain. I wouldn't go flying. Is that going to be more accurate or is the METAR?
Yeah, your PIREPs, and then of course just picking up the ASOS information at the airport is going to give you kind of real-time information.
Yeah, I mean, PIREPs, they're super accurate, right? Look, here's a PIREP from Phoenix, okay? This is Phoenix Sky Harbor, right? At 5,300 feet, a Cessna 172 encountered low-level wind shear, plus 12 knots, short final into runway 21 right, sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to believe that over...
Wind shear.
I'm going to believe that over this.
Right.
Because the METAR is saying 140 at 6.
Wow.
Right? But there's a Cessna losing 12 knots.
Wow. Can you go back to the PIREP again? I just wanted to look at it one more time real quick. This is excellent.
Sorry, I guess they gained 12 knots. So like there's worse things that could have happened. But
low level wind shear.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Short final of runway 21 right.
Whoa.
Right? I really love it because it seems like there's a lot more general aviation airplanes doing PIREPs recently. Because, most of the time it's only airliners that are out here doing PIREPs. Because look, we've got I have no idea what this even is. Oh no, it's a Piper 20. It's a PA-28. Look, they're doing. They got occasional light turbulence up at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
Right? These are more accurate than a METAR will ever be. Because this was somebody in the weather.
Yeah.
Make sense?
No. Yeah, UA means it's a PIREP report, but if it's UUA, it's urgent. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe UUA is urgent. I haven't ever seen an urgent one, but an urgent one would probably be for like volcanic ash that wasn't reported, severe turbulence that wasn't expected, clear air turbulence, stuff that's
this has been so great because I truly, honestly, I was under the impression that PIREPs are mainly, coming from the 737s at, flight level 30,000. I mean, I didn't realize that a lot of, general aviators were reporting these. This is good to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a CRJ 200 that brought up, I don't even know what this is. SK? I would have to actually decode that. But either way, this is a CRJ 200 that made a PIREP at 1,500 feet.
Yeah.
So just because it's mostly, 737s and A320s and whatnot, there's still a reason to read through these.
Yeah.
Damn, there's a lot of there's a lot here.
Wow.
All right. Here was a Cessna 208. All right. No ice or no turbulence, no ice. Bases at 3,000, tops at 4,800.
Nice.
Right. So it's not always bad stuff either. They can just be like, weather's good up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So PIREPs, super accurate. Let's get into an airport you've probably never been to, or at least never been to as a pilot. With this TAF, when would you expect the highest wind?
Okay. Showers and rain scattered, broken. So we've got 330 at 11, gusting to 18. From 1200 Zulu, it looks like it. Oh, nope. 1600 Zulu, it's going from 320, 20 gusting to 34 knots.
Yeah, that's kind of shitty weather.
Yeah. Like it's like Sioux City where I'm at.
All right. Now, when is the lowest ceiling at this airport?
Overcast at 500, broken, showers and rains, overcast. Looks like at 500 Zulu. It's overcast at 1,800.
There you go. Awesome. Let's get into some winds and temps. Nah, I don't want to look at Alaska. Let's look here. What's this one?
Oh, I've gotta review this.
It's that one is gonna be what you call it?
9,000 plus.
Calm and
000.
variable to calm. Wind's variable. Or calm. That's what 999 and 00.
Okay.
Is. All right. You were probably thinking the other one where you got to subtract 50, add 100, right?
And variable.
Light and
All right.
variable. That's the words I was looking for. Isn't there like light and calm, variable and calm? What the
Okay.
See, I'm struggling to come up with the right words at this point. What about here?
I'm just terrible at these. I've got to review all the weather stuff. It's been on my to-do list. But does this mean is that temperature?
So let's break it into its three sections real quick. So
yeah, there's 3 sections.
We've got our direction. We've got our velocity.
Oh, there we go.
Then we've got our temperature, right? But obviously our direction can't be above 36, right? There's nowhere to go above 36. That's where the compass ends. So we're going to subtract 50 from that, which is going to give us 26.
Okay.
Right? So we got wind from 260. And then we're going to add 100 to our velocity. So wind from 260 at 102. And then we've got a temperature, since we're above 24,000 feet, that temperature is going to be negative. So it's negative 43. So altogether, we've got 260 at 102, negative 43.
Got it.
Right?
Got it. I don't okay.
Tools, decision. Now, can you tell me what the what altitude the turbulence is at or range? Yeah, what altitude the turbulence is at in Georgia? Oh God, sorry, too big. There you go. What? So we've got those, right? What altitude is the turbulence in Georgia?
Oh man. That 10,000, am I reading?
I think that 10,000 might, it's 10,000 to 2,000. Right? So you see the
10,000.
slash?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yep. And I see the little turbulent sign. 10,000 to 2,000. It's turbulent.
Yep. Now, what's the freezing level in Montana? That's Montana, right? This is Montana, right?
No.
No? Oh, shit. What's the freezing level in this state?
About Texas? Where are you at? Where's your pointer?
I'm way up here.
Oh, you are way up there. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. There, you're North Dakota over there. Which you would know. It looks like 4,000.
Perfect. Now, I'm not asking you to tell me what this chart is saying, right? I understand high pressure, low pressure, occluded front, stationary fronts. I get that. When would you use this chart?
I think it gives a pretty decent big picture look at the weather. Would you consider it a prognostic chart? I mean, right where I'm at right now, I mean, I'm not at the edge of the high pressure system, and I guess I like the spread on the isobars.
All right.
I'd be concerned if I was planning on traveling near the trough of the low pressure system or the high pressure system, and I'm not. I mean, I'm dead center.
Awesome. So you're thinking more of, I'd be using this chart if I had the intention of making a long flight.
There you go. Yeah. Yep.
Right? A journey. Yep. You know, like I picked
Yeah.
up my airplane down in Kansas and took it up to Wisconsin. I need to be concerned about all of this weather. Instead of looking at 20 different METARs, I can look at this. Right?
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm happy with that. Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, you've given me so much information. I mean, I have a list of weak spots. I mean, one of which is weather and the reporting.
So
I can't seem to bring up my flight briefing, the weather briefing feature on my ForeFlight, and I don't know if I'm supposed to actually hit file.
No. So
because I don't want to file a flight plan.
No.
Like,
I haven't used ForeFlight in ages.
then
if I remember correctly, well, and that's the thing, like, use of EFBs is part of the ACS now. If you intend on using an EFB, the expectation is you know how to use it.
Know it. Mm-hmm.
I haven't used ForeFlight in ages.
Okay.
This, this is Discord, like where you're at right now doing this, mock check ride.
Right.
There's a bunch of other pilots in here that probably use ForeFlight, and they'd probably be a lot more guidance than me when it comes to it, right? So you notice how we had all those channels off to the left. There was instruction, waiting room, and whatnot. And if you go about halfway up, there is aviation, right? And there is just spots there for you to ask any questions that you need, specific to things like ForeFlight. I'm sorry, I'm not a whole lot of help when it comes to ForeFlight. I use Garmin Pilot.
No, you're fine.
Because I use Garmin Pilot because, like, this is my EFB. I just have a folding phone and I just use it instead of an iPad.
Yeah. I'm just frustrated because we restarted it and I'm not getting the standard briefing. I'm getting this vertical cross section, which I want the standard briefing under.
Getting one of those. Yeah, those are really complicated. Hit that back one up there.
Yep. And then I'm getting all this information, and I should just be getting the standard weather briefing.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So hit that back. Let me just.
Yeah.
Do I still? No, I don't have ForeFlight on anything. All right. So we've got. So you hit briefing, and it's giving you that weird thing.
Yeah.
Huh. Unless ForeFlight changed their. What's your? Unless ForeFlight changed it, I don't know.
I don't get it. And we went on Reddit because I was sitting next to my instructor, and he's like, "This is so weird. We have the same flight plan, everything loaded. He's getting the standard briefing. I'm not." we shut it down, restarted it, and I put in a note to ForeFlight, so hopefully they'll contact me. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I'll just go to aviation weather and pull down some reports. I don't need it. I mean, I've got all the imagery right there. I mean, it is an amazing tool. ForeFlight is just amazing.
Oh, yeah. The funny thing is, it's not approved for airline use. Airliners can't use it. It's not approved for 121
Wow.
operations. I have no idea why. But if you are concerned about weather, obviously there's the keys and there's the keys and charts that kind of can help you through it.
Mhm.
Have you read the FAA's weather book? The FAA has a weather textbook.
Yes, I have to order that. I just downloaded the communications book because my radio skills are just
Well, these books are free online.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wait, maybe it's in my documents. What is it called? Hold
It's
on.
an aviation weather handbook. The document is FAA
See,
dash H.
aviation. Okay.
Yeah. It's FAA dash H 8083 28. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't need to read through all of this. There's like there's like 5 chapters you don't really need. Things like, what was it? There's like space weather, radar usage, I don't know, Arctic weather, like things on the North and South Pole. I don't think you plan on flying there. Anytime
So this
soon.
is it, right?
Yep, that's it.
Perfect. It's in ForeFlight. Got it.
Yep.
Take a look.
Yeah, all of the FAA books are free. I absolutely hate schools that force their students to buy the ASA books because it's a ripoff. Like ASA might make just a fine book, but forcing somebody to buy a book that's available for free just seems dirty. Aviation's expensive enough.
No kidding. This is amazing. Oh, there's just like my dad said, you've heard this, but it was the first time I heard it. He's like, you know what your pilot license is all about? It's actually a license to learn how to fly. Because there's just so much stuff.
There is, but I only disagree with that on like one mark because there's like some safety related. There's this base ground level safety stuff
Right.
that
Yep.
really needs to be covered. And I
Yep.
know some students, especially, the young 19-year-olds that are just trying to show off and whatnot, it can be a little difficult to get them to understand the safety aspects that are at play and that I'm not just some old curmudgeon trying to yell at them for having fun. Like, get off my lawn. No. So that's,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it is definitely a license to learn, but not to exceed your limitations, right? There's still set your personal minimums. ForeFlight has that section that allows you to set personal minimums. And it'll even yell at you if you try to go fly and exceeding those personal minimums. Garmin Pilot yelled at me one time because I still had my personal minimum set from when I was a private pilot. And I'm like,
Wow.
you're not going to tell me I can't fly, Garmin Pilot. What the fuck are you thinking? Like, there's like 7-mile visibility. What's your problem?
Yeah, so I just refreshed my personal minimums, but yeah, I should put it in ForeFlight. That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
That is awesome that you have like a little pamphlet for personal minimums.
Yep.
I actually had a student tell me one time that their personal minimums are the aircraft limitations.
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
Oh.
I'm gonna try and be nice about this, but no.
I'm so old. I mean, I'm very conservative. I'm like ridiculously conservative. And my little shark can't handle much wind. I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to be grounded most of the time living in Iowa. But
what's its max demonstrated crosswind?
12
Oh
knots.
God, that's it.
And I know. And I'm like, I might have to move my plane because I only have one runway at Sioux County.
Yeah, I mean,
I know all this stuff has been keeping me awake at night, like the stuff I didn't think about. Oh my God.
that is rough. I'm not gonna lie. Like I found the limitation of my aircraft. It's 27. It's terrifying when you find the limit of the crosswind. Because you're like, keep going. Like, what are we doing?
Wow. Well, I was landing. I did some short field landings yesterday with a 17-degree knot or 17 knot crosswind.
And it's kind of rough, ain't it?
Oh, I mean, it's fun though.
But here's the thing: since you did it,
doing it like this, and you gotta kick the rudder in. And it's like a video game.
it is an absolute blast. But here's the thing: now that you've experienced it, you've got it in your kind of wealth of experience for you to evaluate. Okay, can I go up to 12 or 15 or what have you, right?
Yeah.
But that is awesome that you have a paper like personal minimums. I know when every student I got to when I started them from ground zero, we'd write all kind of personal minimums up on up on the whiteboard, and I'd have them take a picture of it, and it was their phone background. So that anytime we had to go fly, it was like, because like you're always going to check your phone before you go fly. We're addicted to these damn, these damn things.
Right. That's a great idea.
My students didn't exceed their personal minimums, and if they wanted to, we had a conversation about it.
Wow.
So,
gosh, you're full of just all these amazing tips, and I learned so much from this. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I certainly know the areas I still have to study and get prepped for. I'm not going to be shocked if I muck something up on. It's going to be windy. It's always windy here, but it's going to be windy on Saturday, and I've just kind of I was so bummed out and anxious because I literally laid awake one night going, what if I never pass and I own a plane, and oh my god. I called up my brother, and he was like, oh my god. My brothers are like, oh my god, sis, a lot of people fail at the first. Well, a lot of people don't, only 20%. But he's like, just so what, don't worry about it, just go back up the following week and finish it off. Just don't stress out about it.
There was a philosopher, I always forget his name, but the guy said you suffer more in your mind than you ever do in reality.
Oh God, yes.
And when you put it into that context, that like you will talk yourself into a worse situation than ever happens.
Yeah.
Right. So just keep that in mind, and remember, like your instructor, you've already passed your check ride. Just go pass it with somebody else again. Right. It's kind of like when a teacher lost your homework, back in like high school, and they're like, well, if you did it, it must be pretty easy to do it again.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same idea when it comes to a check ride. Obviously there's some stuff that you need to work on when it comes to the oral.
Yep.
But it's at no point was I like, oh dear Lord, that this is absolute. And that's the thing. I've done some that I'm just like, come on, like that's all you got. Like, you didn't do terrible. There was some things that you need to work on. And the best part was that you recognized them.
Yep.
The
whole reason I signed up for this. No, I just like, I am going to do this. This dude knows his stuff, and I'm hearing things from you that I'm not hearing elsewhere. But you know what? That's a really good point. My instructor would not say, hey, you're ready for your check ride if I wasn't.
Nope. And
I didn't think of it that way.
And I know I don't. Like, I've had students get all kinds of pissed off because they're like, I'm ready. I was like, I don't care if you think you're ready. I know you ain't. I haven't maintained over a 90% first try pass rate by signing off people who didn't know what they were doing. Right.
Oh,
you can think that I'm a dick, but you're going to pass your check ride when you get there. You're not going today though.
Wow. Okay. That's a good way to, because it kind of reflects on them too. So they want to make sure that, I'm prepared.
Yep. And that's the thing. Like there's a thing called a gold seal flight instructor rating. And, I met the requirements for it, and I just never filed the paperwork. And now I just haven't signed off enough students recently. But you have to maintain over a 90% first try pass rate.
Oh, wow.
And, it's kind of a feather in your cap thing, right? No school's going to give you a raise or anything for it, but it's a very much feather in your cap kind of thing, resume fluff. But if they're signing off students that aren't ready, they'll never get it.
Yeah. This makes me feel good.
Yeah. And a student failing a check ride is not a student failing. That is, in many cases, that is an instructor failing the student.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I understand a lot of students are just, or a lot of instructors are just out there getting hours trying to get to the airlines. They don't care. But I look at it this way. If my student goes and fails a check ride and their intention is to be an airline pilot, they're going to have to explain that check ride failure at every interview for the rest of their life.
Wow.
It might only impact me for a week, but it's going to impact them for the rest of their aviation career.
Wow.
So,
Oh, this is great. I mean, I've been very pleased with my instructor, but there is a great article that appeared in the AOPA, I think it was AOPA. They wrote about flight instructors and like kind of the attitude. I'm sure you heard or saw, this is so horrifying, the jackass that took that kid up.
Yeah.
And he's recording. You want to talk about macho? I would have verbally, if that was my instructor, because I'm older, right? And I've been in positions where I've hired and fired people. Within 5 minutes, I would have verbally eviscerated that kid.
Yep.
I would have totally made him walk away with his tail between his legs. He was being so rude to that poor kid, and then you think he went up and killed the kid.
Yeah.
It's just, oh my God.
And that's why, you hear people that are like, I don't want to be an instructor, or like the students, they're like, I don't like my instructor. They're lazy, or they don't do this, they don't do that. Fire them. You wouldn't continue to go to McDonald's if every time you went there, they left the top bun off of your McChicken.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a couple more dollars to hire a flight instructor, but it's not worth, like, I ain't never had a job worth dying over, and I ain't never had a flight worth dying over. So I'm definitely not going to go fly with an instructor that's not going to ensure that we're operating safely. Right?
I hope your audience hears this. I mean, don't be afraid to fire your instructor if you don't feel 100% confident. That's such a great piece of advice. One last thing, I'll let you go. I do watch a lot of these aviation disasters, like DPE, the pilot debrief and all that.
Yep.
And part of me is like, God, am I just creating all this unnecessary anxiety? But I think they all represent learning opportunities. What say you? I mean, would you recommend student pilots look at some of these tragedies, or should we stay away from it? Or,
I generally recommend against it for student pilots, because a lot of them are covering some pretty fringe events.
Okay.
And also, I feel like very often it's in poor taste. A lot of these people that are doing these aren't instructors. They're not DPEs. They're not safety evaluators. They have no credentials to say shit about these things.
To even comment
on it. And in many cases, I feel like it's in pretty poor taste. When people continue to put up these recordings of people ending up in the worst positions in their lives just so that they can get a couple clicks on TikTok.
Yeah.
Fucking gross. Like, imagine
I don't have
you in
TikTok.
that situation. Yeah.
Oh,
or
God.
Instagram or YouTube,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Imagine you being in that situation, scared in that airplane, and then the rest of the world starts making memes out of it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I really have a lot of respect for the guy. I think it's Pilot Debrief, because he's very well credentialed and very tactful and professional. And he's putting it out there to just like learn from this.
And I think
But
I've seen
your
some
point
of
is
this.
very well taken. If something is done, you have to make sure who's putting out the commentary.
Exactly. And that's why I like, if I ever make a comment on an accident or an incident, it's well after the NTSB has already done their evaluation. I'm not a professional. I'm not a crash investigator. I am not. So people will tag me in videos like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not an investigator. I'll wait for the NTSB to put out their hearing or put out their findings on it. And then I'll read through the findings and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. How do we prevent you from being in this situation? Because again, I wasn't in the plane. I wasn't in the crash. I'm not trained as a crash investigator, or incident investigator. So it's not my job, nor am I credentialed to provide comment on it. That's why I don't do airline interview prep. That's why I only do mock check rides. I've never been on a panel to hire for airlines. So how the fuck do I know how to prepare you for an interview?
Wow.
Right? But I have
Words of wisdom.
Do what you're qualified for.
Yeah. Oh my God. this I gotta let my dog out. He's been
All
like
right.
whining. This has been. I just can't thank you enough. This is keep at it. You just have a great. You have a great persona. You know, you make aviation fun, but at the same time, we're learning from you. And thanks again.
Well, I appreciate it. You
Yeah.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, I will do. Have a good night.
You too.